Give us just a second here. We're almost ready to start.
Before we start, 30 seconds?
Yeah. Where's she going? I'd like to call to order the April 13th meeting of the Boulder Valley School District Board of Education. Sandy, would you please call the roll?
Albright.
Here.
Belleville.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Myers.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Roberge.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to remind everyone who is gathered here today that the mission of the Boulder Valley School District is to graduate students in the new century who have the knowledge, skills, and personal characteristics that will make this world a safer, more thoughtful, and more inclusive place in which to live. In support of that mission, I would like to begin our first agenda item tonight. It's the superintendent's report. Dr. King.
Good evening, Mr. President, and tonight's honor roll is one I look forward to every year. We are honoring the state championship teams from across the district for the winter season, and that usually means we have a room full of students from Broomfield High School, and tonight is no exception. So we will begin with the Colorado, jumping around here. Let's begin with the four-time Class 4A girls basketball champion Broomfield Eagles and their coaching staff. If you all would join me at the podium, please, girls. Let's get the hardware on the camera right here, Coach, so we can. That's perfect. That's perfect. Thanks. For just the third time in all of Colorado high school girls basketball at all levels has a team won 4 straight state titles. These extraordinary athletes are the first front range team and the first 4A team ever to accomplish that streak. These young ladies have also won the last 4 league championships and 4 Northern League tournament championships. Their record for this year was 27-1. Their record for the past 4 years is 109-3. And 2 of these girls have been on the team for all 4 state titles. Sarah Hicks and Amber Chase. Will you raise your hands? Sarah now? Autumn didn't make it? Okay. Congratulations. So I'm going to go through and name the team now, and you'll raise your hand for me, please, when I say your name. Morgan Rensmerson,
She is at a soccer game
And
today.
Autumn Chase, we said, is not here. Cody Bradfield, Katie Neff, Megan Prinz, Brittany Zeck, Sarah Hicks, Tanya Medema, Millie Reeves, Taylor Schreiter, Renee Waters, and Bree Bergesser. Managers are Morgan DeColos, Abby Gentry, Riley Sloniker, and Haley Williams. Assistant coaches, are these folks here tonight? Ben Vayer,
Bager.
Kaylin Eichhorn, Ed Vandehoff, Bonnie Most, and Brittany Meacham, and head coach Mike Kroll. Congratulations for making history. We're really proud of you.
Thank you.
And if you'll hand those out, I will hand these out.
Okay.
to the extra.
T. Sarah. Zach. Megan. Katie. Cody.
And I'm sure we'll see you up here again next year, Coach.
Let's hope so.
Would the Class 4A state wrestling champion Broomfield Eagles please join me at the podium, gentlemen, coaches? And Coach Schmidt, you want to get the hardware up here?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. This year's state title represents back-to-back state titles for the Eagles wrestling team for 2009 and 2010. Their team score was 119 and a half points, and they beat Roosevelt High School by just 1.5 points. And in the 75-year history of the state tournament, that was the closest finish ever in a team title. So it was very dramatic, and actually it came down to the last match. And Josh was competing at the 171-pound, and if he won the match, they won the team title, and if he lost the match, they lost, and the rest is history, right, Josh? So, there were two individual champions on this team, and Josh is one of them, Josh Van Tyne, and Cortland Hacker is working this evening, I think, and not able to make it. So I'm going to rattle off the names here of the team members who made it to the state tournament, and you'll raise your hands, gentlemen. Gavin Gomez at 103 pounds. Mikey Ferraguso at 112 pounds. Cortland Hacker, we mentioned, is not here, state champion at 119 pounds. Jerry Huff at 125 pounds. Nick Babcock at 130 pounds. Nick. John Zurich at 135 pounds. Jordan Gutierrez was the state champion last year at 152 pounds. Connor King at 160 pounds. And state champion Josh Van Tyne at 171 pounds. Assistant coaches, and I saw several of them here this evening: Chaz Dacre, Charlie Hacker, Craig Johnson, Eric Mendoza, Joe Piera, Matt Schmidt, raise your hand, Matt, Mark Van Tyne, and Jason Wanaka. And their head coach is the legend. You've all heard of him, I'm sure, Mark Schmidt, Coach of the Year for the state. Mark Schmidt is retiring this year, and no amount of talking and begging and pleading will get him to change that plan. I know, because I've tried. But
Change that 110 program back.
yeah, okay, we'll work on that. Coach Schmidt has served the district, 25 plus years, 4 state titles at Centaurus High School, and these two back-to-back to finish his very storied career on. So congratulations, Coach Schmidt, and thank you very much. Congratulations. Congratulations. Nice to be one here tonight. Thanks for coming, gentlemen. Good job. All right. Coach Johnson, working back there.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again and congratulations, and we'll see you guys back here next year too. We also have two individual champions that we very much want to honor tonight, and I think they're en route, but not.
They haven't made it, and their AD and their advisor are here to accept on their behalf.
Okay, great. All right. Before I move off of the Broomfield, I see Ginger Ramsey here. Broomfield, in Ginger's tenure, in the last 10 years at Broomfield High, they've won 18 state titles. Now, many schools in a decade don't win any state titles. Many schools would be thrilled to have one state title. Almost 2 a year is pretty impressive on behalf of Ginger and her athletic department and their commitment to excellence. So, Ginger. Did you say Mark Sibley is here from Monarch High School? Or
No, it's the deck advisor.
Oh, the deck advisor. Well, please come up for us. Oh, thank
She's not here yet,
okay,
so
no,
sorry about that.
that's okay. Well, Veronica Baker, we're honoring from Monarch High School, and you are her DECA advisor. Thank you. Veronica Baker, a senior at Monarch, earned the state title at the Colorado DECA State Leadership Conference in Colorado Springs in the Principles of Marketing competition in February. DECA is an international association of high school and college students studying marketing, management, and entrepreneurship in business, finance, hospitality, marketing, sales, and service. So congratulations for Veronica, and thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
And lastly, we're honoring Max Wessel from Boulder High School. And do we have his athletic director here? Brent Graham from Boulder High. Thanks for coming, Brent.
Thank you.
Max Wessel, co-captain of the Boulder High School wrestling team, won the state 5A title in the 189-pound weight class. This season, he was undefeated with a 41-0 record. And in 2010, Max was also earned fifth in the All-American competition, as well as an All-Colorado selection for his weight class. For his high school career, Max posted a record of 113-11. It was a 3-time regional champion, among other accomplishments. And he will be going to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, to wrestle for Lehigh University this fall. And we're proud of him. Sorry he couldn't make it, but give him my best.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Okay, and moving on, Mr. President, I'd like to thank the approximately 650 community members who participated in our 13 community budget forums between February 10 and March 31st. District budget and finance staff and I listened attentively and engaged in meaningful and helpful discussions about the serious financial challenges facing our district. In each of these 90-minute meetings, I heard several common themes that are being reviewed as the BVSD 2010-2011 preliminary budget is being prepared. I will address those findings that they will take to the school board on April 20th at the budget work session next week. In addition to the community budget forums, BVSD administrative leadership has also met with several school faculties and parent groups throughout the district. And later in tonight's agenda, I will speak in more detail about the information gathered from those forums. And this concludes my report.
Thank you. When we adopted our new B policies, we made a slight change in the order of the agenda. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get the changes made in the computer system. So I'm going to go with policy rather than what's on the printed page. And Tori, you want to come up and give us the SAC report, and then you can go and get back to your studies?
Okay, thank you, members of the board, Mr. President. I'm Tori Himes. I'm a senior at New Vista High School. I'm here from SAC, the Student Accountability Advisory Committee, to update you on our current actions we're taking in our subcommittees. In our last meeting on April 6th, the CSAP Incentive Committee sent an email to Angela Norland of the CDE about standardized testing and asked for assistance and advice for further actions to take within the subcommittee. And the Achievement Gap Committee is working on implementing the AP Shadow program, which we've talked about before, and we are working on continuing it into the fall of next year to gain more students to be shadowed and students to shadow, as well as obtain permission from principals and AP teachers. So that's pretty much where we are right now. Are there any questions or comments?
Board members? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Our next agenda item is public participation. The board recognizes the value of public comment on issues related to the operation of the schools. To ensure that our meeting is conducted in an orderly manner, we ask that persons who address the board follow certain rules. Please confine your comments to matters that are germane to the business of the school district. Speakers on agenda items will be heard first, followed by those speaking to non-agenda items. Please limit your presentation to 2 minutes. There is a light system on the podium. It will turn green when you begin. As you progress through the time, it will turn yellow. Finally, it'll turn red, and then it will flash and beep. When it gets to that point, please finish up your sentence, summarize quickly so that we can hear from the largest number of people. We're expecting a lot of public comment tonight, so we really do want to hear from everyone who came out. We do, if we go over the first hour, so we'll stop public participation an hour after we begin. If we go over the first hour, we will stop public participation until the end of the meeting. You have 2 choices. You can either come back or you can stay for the end of the meeting, and when we're done with our regular business agenda, we will reopen public participation. Or if you choose, you can come back at the next meeting and you will be first on the list. In some cases, people will give their 2 minutes to another person, but no person may have more than 4 minutes. Please recognize that students often attend or view our meetings. Speakers' remarks, therefore, should be suitable for an audience that includes kindergarten through 12th grade students. And finally, the board president may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement that is unrelated to the business of the district or inappropriate for K-12 students. Board members will not answer questions or comment during board communication, again, so that we may hear from the largest number of people. However, board members often will answer or comment at board communication, which immediately follows public participation. So you may want to stick around for that. So with that introduction, I'm going to call people up 2 at a time. So when your name is called, please come up to the podium. I will call the next person in line. Please be, if you want, get up and you can stand behind the podium. Please be ready to take the podium so we can keep things moving along. The first speakers are on agenda items. Tonight, the first speaker is Colleen Doyle, who will speak on the budget. Colleen, you here? Okay. The next topic is instrumental music. The first speaker is Lori Bialik, who will have 2 minutes from someone named Sandberg, apparently. So please come up to the mic, and the next speaker is Terry Bradley, who will speak on TAG. Thank you. Pass this around.
what you have there is a bunch more of our ballots that we passed around for people to sign. So a lot more information there from what you had before. I'm here to talk about 5th grade instrumental music. And hopefully we can come to a little bit of an agreement here tonight, or we're hoping anyway. Trust is a delicate emotion that when broken is not easily repaired. I've always told my children that I will trust them implicitly until he or she shows me that I can't. That trust has been broken between the district and the parents, music teachers, and community. It will be very hard to repair. We will always be on our guard when the district even utters the word music. The district will inform you that it is recommending that the option 1 proposal be followed with staffing for instrumental music to occur according to student enrollment. This almost sounds reasonable until one starts to think about it. Number 1, first, you were given a document with a whole bunch of pages, about 20 of them. On pages 2, 3, and 4 of that document, the BVSD Instrumental and General Music Survey results handed to you by the district, the parents and teachers surveyed strongly agreed to this opinion poll statement. Regardless of my answers above or any other considerations, 5th grade instrumental and general music should be exactly the same next year as they are this year, is what the poll said. That survey did not state 5th grade instrumental and general music should be exactly the same next year with staffing changes as they are this year. The question on the opinion poll said in black and white that everything would remain exactly the same. That is what parents and teachers strongly supported, nothing else. Second, in the description of the cabinet proposal on page 1, it states, students in 4th grade are introduced to instrumental music options during the month of April so that allocations can be made to each school this spring based on enrollment figures. Today is April 13th. That gives band and orchestra teachers only 2 more weeks this month to recruit and gather data from 4th graders. During the same 40 minutes twice a week that they are also supposedly supposed to be teaching our 5th graders and preparing them for upcoming concerts and preparing for festivals and concerts at the high schools and the middle schools where they also teach. Any parent who has had a student in music knows that this time of year is crunch time for concerts. Considerably more time is necessary to gather accurate data from the 4th graders regarding next year's numbers for band and orchestra. 2 weeks is simply not enough. Third, and most importantly, there has not been enough time for the Cabinet's proposal released last Thursday, April 8th, to today's meeting, Tuesday, April 13th, to determine how instrumental music staffing changes will affect the elementary schools, especially the smaller ones. Some teachers are worried that staffing changes will affect literacy blocks. Others believe that the district and principals are hammering this cabinet proposal through to purposefully cause problems next year so that they will have leverage to eliminate 5th grade music at that time. Obviously, these are concerns which have not yet been addressed. In conclusion, I thank the Board of Education for all of your time that you have put toward an issue that is only a small portion of the big picture this year. However, I am asking you to find the Cabinet's proposal unacceptable and to vote against it. Instead, please propose that the term option 1 or option anything be dropped and that no changes at all to 5th grade instrumental music or general music occur next year at all. This process has been far from transparent. The data gathered is abhorrently unscientific. It makes the biologist in me shudder at the lack of scientific process here. The instrumental music staff was blindsided, and even if you have been basically kept in the dark as to the purposes behind eliminating 5th grade instrumental music, obviously much more evidence-based education, evaluation, and accountability are necessary. It takes time and transparent discussions. Therefore, the 5th grade music program should not be changed at all for the school year 2010-2011. Thank you.
Terry Bradley, 4 minutes.
Thank you. Sandy, do you have those? Thank you. Good evening. My name is Terry Bradley. I know that Jennifer Barr will be speaking later about the Talented and Gifted program in BVSD and how our district supports these students. I'm here today representing 3 different positions I work in related to giftedness. First of all, I'm the chair of the State Advisory Committee for Gifted and Talented Education. Our role at the State Advisory Committee is to advise the State Board of Education on policies and statutes that affect gifted students in Colorado. Secondly, I serve as the TAG advisor at Fairview High School, where over 400 students are identified as gifted. I work closely with the students, the parents, their teachers, and their counselors. I'm also the president of Boulder Valley Gifted and Talented, or BVGT, and those are the brochures that are going around. We're the nonprofit organization that a week ago hosted Temple Grandin at Fairview and drew over 700 people to the school to her presentation. BVGT is the Boulder affiliate of the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented, which in turn is the affiliate of the National Association for Gifted and Talented. We also are involved in state-level advocacy for funding that supports all of our P20 education as part of the Great Futures campaign. BVGT has bylaws that sanction our operating procedures. In my various roles from the state level to the local level, I see that the need for heightened awareness and improved services for this population of gifted students is great. With close to 13% of BVSD students being identified as gifted, this is a significant portion of our population. The way BVGT sees our organization benefiting BVSD is that we work closely with Jennifer Barr and Becky Wittenberg in the district TAG office. In fact, Becky and Jennifer share a board position as a liaison for BVGT, because we know that joining forces with district personnel helps us all to work collaboratively for the benefit of the entire gifted community. BVGT is your ally. Parents and teachers are hungry for information to learn more about raising and working with gifted and talented students. That's why we formed BVGT. We are TAG advisors, parents, and gifted education specialists, 4 of us with advanced degrees in gifted education, 5 of us currently work in this district with gifted students, and 3 other board members are previous TAG advisors for the district. We're a credible group of people, and we want to work alongside BVSD. Over the past 3 years, Boulder Valley Gifted and Talented has brought in experts to talk about topics which include emotional health and well-being, visual spatial learners, creativity, profiles of the gifted, twice exceptional children, asynchrony, and most recently, helping students with autism develop their strengths. During the school year, we host presentations almost every month. In the short time, 3 years that BVGT has been in existence, we've grown to 160 paid members. We have over 600 people on our mailing list. We rarely have presentations with fewer than 75 people, and in fact, most of our presentations have over 100 people in the audience. BVGT is anxious to hear about the proposed improvements to BVSD's TAG educational programming that will be suggested at the April 27th meeting. Many of our board members have been very closely involved in the Gifted Task Force to help provide expertise and information. Boulder Valley Gifted and Talented will continue our collaborative efforts with BVSD, and we look forward to making forward strides together for the sake of the whole community's gifted students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Barry Goldberg, followed by Deborah Goldberg.
Hello, thanks for having me here today and good evening. I'm here to talk about TAG and programs and the upcoming decision about the school for gifted people within schools. So I'll walk down the halls of Fairview and I see lots of students having fun and learning. And isn't that how school should be? You go to school and learn and have fun? But for many of the TAG students in BVSD, it doesn't quite work that way. I know I personally found that I had the choice between being in an unadvanced class and being bored out of my mind, or being in an advanced class and having high expectations of me with regards to organization and the ability to manage work. Giftedness does not equal the ability to do work. And in many of our advanced classes, the amount of work that's already expected of students is taking away from the ability for deep thinking. What our gifted students need is a place where they can go be with other gifted students and exercise their brains the way they need to be exercised. So thank you. And I'll try and wrap this up early so we can all get our say and get out of here a little early.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for hearing us, and thank you for considering, how we can help these at-risk gifted students even in a time of severe budget constraints. And I know there are ways to do this with minimal cost, because that's what we have been talking about on the task force. What I'm going to talk about first here is adapted from writings by Tracy Inman and Tamara Fisher that have really struck home for me. So what don't children learn if they are not given appropriate work in their early school years? They know what we're teaching. They'll do just fine. Well, what they don't learn are study skills and time management skills. But that's pretty obvious. They don't learn that there's a connection between effort and accomplishment. They never learn this if they always accomplish what's assigned without effort. They don't learn that if they don't immediately know how to do something, that does not mean they are stupid. Okay, these seem obvious to us, but our children are not having trouble internalizing this. They do not learn perseverance in the face of frustration. And worse, they don't learn how to handle frustration. They don't learn how not to melt down in the face of frustration. They don't learn that there's nothing wrong with them, that they are not freaks because they don't fit in and they are not like everyone else around them. They really need a teacher who values them and shows that they value them through some of the in-depth assignments they may get. And also they need to work with other students like them so they don't feel that there's something wrong with them. They don't learn that they can fail at something, which may mean simply creating something that's less than perfect, without feeling that they are a failure. So it's not about the academics. It's not about whether they can contribute maximally to society. It's about these children as people. And they are not learning what arguably are the most important skills to function in society, but they are also being harmed emotionally. And in my family, both of my children have been struggling with emotional issues, certainly in part because of these things they have not learned, to the point where this past fall, each of them spent time hospitalized for severe depression. And this is what I hope you consider when you try and find ways, without spending much additional money, because I know it's not there, but to really help these at-risk, primarily highly gifted, twice exceptional young children. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are on the agenda item of Bike to School Day. The first speaker is Landon Hilliard, and the second speaker is Sue Prant.
Hello, board members. Hello, colleagues. Hello, audience. My name's Landon Hilliard. I work for the school district's transportation department. And in anticipation of the proclamation for BVSD Bike to School Day on Earth Day being proclaimed by you all this evening, I just have a few words about our internal transportation programs. I oversee a program called To School, and in a nutshell, we're encouraging transportation options and promoting health. And those transportation options have a code word now known as active transportation. So they have to do with good old-fashioned walking, biking, and bus riding. We're trying to turn back the clock to the time when walking and biking to school was seen as normal and a regular day activity. The primary vehicle for Safe Routes for the To School program is something known as Safe Routes to School. It's a federally funded program, and it's a national movement with the goal of simply increasing walking and biking of students to school. And we provide incentives for students for them to be more physically active and healthy. A couple of highlights. Since 2006, we've garnered over $220,000 of federal funds to institute these programs. We work in a close partnership with the City of Boulder, who institutes infrastructure programs that improve conditions for walking and biking. We have a new program called BLAST, which is a bike education program taught in PE classes for 5th and 6th graders, teaching them the skills of riding a bicycle to school. And we recently were awarded a bike rack project, which installed more than 630 new bicycle spaces at the schools. So our major aim, and this is ambitious, is for the district to be a leader in the state and in the country in sustainable practices. And health and wellness and nutrition and transportation are all aspects of this movement towards sustainability. So in that light, we have something called BVSD Bike to School Day. We're taking the big tent approach. Everybody's invited. And I have some promotional material for you all, stickers and little flyers.
Excellent. Our next speaker is Sue Prant. Did I get your name right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Good job. Hi, how are you? I'm the coordinator of Bike to School Day. And last year, your first Bike to School Day, you had 2,200 students, over 2,200 students and staff participating. And we hope for that and better this year. It's on Earth Day, as Landon said, on the 22nd. And I'm going to just touch on a few things that Landon didn't have time to touch on. One of the great things about the Safe Routes to School program is that the Safe Routes to School grants are 100% federally funded. So that's good news for a school district with, all school districts have budget problems, but with budget problems. Another thing that the Bike Rack project, which I've been working with Landon for a few years on various projects in the school district, that Bike Rack project is really the first in the country like that to put bike racks at a whole bunch of different schools and really answer the question. We're promoting kids to walk and bike to school, but when they get there, they have to have a safe place to lock their bike. So it's really a model program for the country. And the other thing, Landon's too modest, but last year he was awarded with Bear Creek Elementary, Jim Overstars award for the best Safe Routes School program in the country. So I encourage BVSD to keep on the great track along with the City of Boulder. I also run Bike to Work Day for the City of Boulder, so if it has Bike 2, I'm involved. And this is a great program and a great partnership with that program. And thank you for approving the proclamation, and we're really excited about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speakers are on the agenda item of the Bear Creek Appeal. The first speaker is Marlon Busey. The second is Sheila Kerrigan. Marlon?
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. I am Marlon Buse. I've been a longtime neighbor and supporter of Bear Creek Elementary School, but I'm here tonight to discuss my disappointment in the process related to the Educational Facilities Master Plan at Bear Creek Elementary. I've been in meetings hearing about this is the most cost-effective option. When that's convenient, when it's not, it's in the best interest of the students in this school. If that's not convenient, it's the bigger picture of it meets the scope and purpose of the plan. We've been called unreasonable and selfish at times, but what I do know is that in 2006, a group of people met with first and foremost in their mind considering a plan that was in the best interest of the students at Bear Creek Elementary School. And that had to be first and foremost. Secondly, it fit in the cost parameters that they felt could be presented to the voters of this school district. Third, the design appeared to be take into consideration building massing issues because it is a very small campus. I work with a lot of schools in Wyoming where they're surrounded by thousands of acres of rangeland, so it really doesn't matter, but we are close neighbors. Fourth, board members told us at the time that we could trust the master plans would be followed. With that in mind, I don't feel that we've been at all unreasonable. Is expand and remodel the gymnasium the same definition and scope as construct a new gymnasium? I think not. I'm not sure why we have deviated so far from the well thought out plan in 2006. Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila Kerrigan is next, followed by Marty Hopper.
Good afternoon, members of the board. I would like to ask you to direct your staff to stick with remodeling and expanding the existing gymnasium at Bear Creek Elementary. I want you to know that the DAT at Bear Creek was told as part of their deliberations that it was required that they build a high school regulation size gym. It has now been downgraded to a 3,800 square foot gym rather than a 6,400 square foot gym. So the thing that was chosen isn't even consistent with what is being done now. The DAT wasn't given all the information. Wrong numbers were given to them. We've also just found out that excavation down 13 feet behind the school, behind the existing gym, which is supposed to be remodeled, is going to be required, and fill dirt. The big objection to actually expanding the gym was that they'd have to bring in fill dirt. The DAT process, the DAT broke several rules of its own process. There was no notice to the neighborhood. There was absolutely no attempt to try to get external stakeholders. This is the gym that the ballot said would be enlarged and remodeled. This is the new gym of 8,800 square feet, plus bathrooms and things. There's no reason it all needs to be this tall. And I'd like you to look at these pictures. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty Hopper is next.
Hi, my name is Marty Hopper, and I'm here for the fourth time to raise our concerns about the proposed construction of what we have just learned last week to be now over 10,000 new square feet on the west side of Bear Creek Elementary alone, which is tightly bordered, as you know, by homes. At this point, I feel that we have already presented the substance of our concerns, and you have our appeal that you'll be discussing tonight. So rather than talk about those specifics, I just like to speak for a moment from the heart and say that it makes me feel extremely sad to be here again tonight. It saddens me to be in an adversarial position with Boulder Valley Schools, where my two sons received an outstanding education. It saddens me particularly to be in a conflict with Bear Creek. My husband and I have lived in the Bear Creek neighborhood for 30 years, and we're all part of the same community, the Bear Creek community. I started the Bear Creek Outdoor Cinema, where families have gathered on summer evenings for 3 years to build community and watch family movies. I see the Bear Creek principals, staff, and parents every day at our small neighborhood gym, at the store, or out on the school grounds. So this conflict has had daily implications in terms of harming interpersonal relationships and the feeling of community that we have enjoyed for so long. Also, as I've mentioned before, my husband and I volunteered at Bear Creek for many years, teaching conflict resolutions to students, coaching them to work toward win-win solutions. Since a win-win solution absolutely has existed all along for this project, it feels like a particular betrayal to have to be here tonight in a serious conflict with the district. We have been voicing our concerns to the district since October 26th of last year. So tonight, after 6 months of attempting to work out a solution, I'm here to ask you, the board, to honor the promises you made to us when you asked us to support you with our votes in 2006. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next set of speakers are on non-agenda items, and most of these are about universal breakfast. The first speaker is Lynn O'Hara, who will have a total of 4 minutes, 2 minutes from Jill Clark, and the second speaker is Valerie Hudson. So Lynn O'Hara.
Hello, I'm Lynn O'Hara from Emerald Elementary. This is Sue Remington, a first grade teacher, and Lisa Troxel, a kindergarten teacher, and I teach first grade. This is our first time to stand here, so we're a little nervous, so there's, support here for me. Recently, Emerald Elementary was given a mandate that next fall we need to implement the federally funded Universal Breakfast program. And we feel implementing this program will result in blatant discrimination against students who are already burdened by poverty. And we have in our school, we have a high number of minority students. And we feel this way because in a universal breakfast program, the children don't eat breakfast before school, they eat it during instructional time. And we have figured out that during the school year, our students are going to lose a minimum of over 2 weeks of instruction time. And other schools are going to have that time that we really need. We've been told that we can recover that lost instruction time if we create a working breakfast for our little ones. We're a magnet school for English language learners. We have many languages at Emerald, and in our classrooms, our instruction has to be explicit and interactive to be effective and meet the needs of our students. In addition, our educational para support that we count on, it's going to become breakfast para support. Other schools will maintain their educational para support, and we won't. Also, at Emerald next fall, our new cafeteria, paid for by the taxpayers, it's going to be ready. And in an old school, that's a big deal. But it's going to sit empty all morning because a part of the universal breakfast is the children eat in the classroom. And other schools, they get to eat in their cafeterias. And cafeterias, they're designed to meet the health inspection standards. Our classrooms aren't. Now, we know that research supporting the universal breakfast, it doesn't anticipate the damages of educational discrimination against poverty students. However unintentional, discrimination is still discrimination. No excuses. Mandating the universal breakfast program at Emerald, we know it's going to add federal funds to the district food budget, but the food budget is the district responsibility. We're asking you to remove that issue from Emerald's shoulders and please evaluate the universal breakfast program on the educational impact it's going to have on our students. We know, we did a recent survey, and most of our students, the majority, they eat breakfast at home. And often it's a hot breakfast in the tradition of their culture. We also have an existing breakfast program at Emerald before school for the children who need it. And we now know that we do have a small percentage who are not eating breakfast. And now that we know that, we can fix this small problem. We really feel that if you implement the universal breakfast at Emerald, it's comparable to using a fire hose to put out a birthday candle. And we think it'll have the similar results. Federal programs are really good if they strengthen a school's education program, but this one penalizes us. So we're asking you to please review the decision to put universal breakfast at Emerald in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Valerie Hudson, followed by Debbie Eck. Valerie will have 4 minutes, 2 minutes from Sue Remington.
Good evening, members of the board. This is Jill Clark, one of my first grade team members. My name is Valerie Hudson, and I'm a first grade teacher at Emerald Elementary. 100% of our staff opposes having universal breakfast served during instructional time in our classrooms. These are just a few of the reasons. At Emerald Elementary School, we already have a successful breakfast program that meets our needs. We did a class survey for a week, and close to 90% of our students are already eating breakfast every single day. Approximately 70 of our students eat breakfast in our cafeteria every morning, which is about 20% of our students. The students that do not eat breakfast occasionally have a variety of reasons, such as I got up late, I wasn't hungry, or I don't like the food in the cafeteria. The staff addresses these isolated incidences of not eating breakfast with help from the cafeteria, office staff, and teachers. We just did a family survey, and it showed that 89% of our parents want to keep our breakfast program the way it is now, served in the cafeteria for those who need it or want it, and served before the instructional day begins. The vast majority of our students eat breakfast at home with their families. The U.S. government is not making Boulder Valley start universal breakfast at Emerald, nor does the government require that the universal breakfast be served in our classrooms during the instructional day. I ask that the district not change a successful breakfast program when there is nothing wrong with it. The Emerald staff is concerned about the loss of instructional time by serving universal breakfast during our school day. If implemented, we would lose at least 15 to 20 minutes a day, equating to about 2 weeks of instructional time we would be losing. For example, a first grade teacher at a school that does not have a high number of free and reduced lunch, such as Cole, Superior, or Douglas, would get at least 2 more weeks of instructional time than I do at Emerald. Less instruction time does not support increased academic growth. A simple solution to keep our current instructional time is to serve breakfast before the day begins, as it is now. We have concerns that serving breakfast to 20 to 30 minutes a day in our classrooms at tables and desks on carpeted floor will not be as sanitary as serving breakfast in the cafeteria. Food, crumbs, and spilled milk will be on the tables, desks, and floors in our classrooms. Increased food in the classroom on a daily basis will more than likely increase the number of insects and rodents. Spilled milk on the carpets is a big concern. We have one janitor in the morning to clean 16 classrooms and other rooms and hallways as students carry their foods to special classes or pull-out classes. If a janitor is dealing with several spills and emptying garbage in all these classrooms, it might take him or her a while to get to my classroom spill. I might be able to dry up a little of the milk with a paper towel, but it will have soaked in. With no air conditioning, imagine what our classroom might smell like in August or September when classroom temperatures typically reach the mid to high 80s inside the room. When the janitor does arrive with supplies to clean the carpet, our instructional time will be further disrupted. A simple solution would be to serve breakfast in the cafeteria as it is being done now. In closing, I'd like to share one of the parent comments that was written on the parent survey. There is already a breakfast plan in effect for those parents who choose to use or cannot afford to feed their own children. Do not penalize the rest of the students by forcing them to partake in school breakfast and lose classroom quality time. I ask that you, the school board, and the district listen to our families and staff at Emerald and not make us serve universal breakfast in our classrooms and take away instructional time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Jay Johnson, who will have 4 minutes, 2 minutes from Lisa Troxel.
Hello, my name is Deborah Eck, and I'm a paraeducator at Emerald Elementary. I am here tonight to speak on behalf of the other paraeducators at Emerald. The paraeducators at Emerald work closely with the teachers to assist in educating children. We do not do our jobs because we make an enormous amount of money. We do it because we care about students, and we know that we can make a difference in their lives. We've been told that some of our hours will be cut for next year. It doesn't make sense to us that while our hours are being cut next year, we're hearing that the Universal Breakfast Program will be started at our school. In a letter that I read from Ellen Miller Brown, Leslie Stafford, and Beth Collins, it read, "At Columbine, Sanchez, and University Hill, the day begins for grades K through 2 with breakfast being placed by paraprofessionals on placemats on the students' desks. Paras move from room to room, helping the students open packages or beverage cartons. At the end of breakfast, desks are cleared and cleaned by paras, teachers, or students." It is our understanding that paras at Universal Breakfast Schools are not given additional time to their schedule to perform the duties that will be required with Universal Breakfast. They need to take time away from their other jobs, such as the health room aide or assisting teachers and the office. When their time is taken away to serve breakfast, in this case it creates a domino effect which impacts many areas of our school. Our school already has a successful breakfast program that provides a hot meal to our students from 7:30 to 7:50 before school begins. We are able to provide this program without any time being taken away from any other areas of our school. The Universal Breakfast Program will not benefit our students, and in fact will take more time away from our primary focus, which is educating students. For these reasons and many more, I believe that Universal Breakfast is not a good fit for our Emerald. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jay?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, thank you for your time. My name is Jay Johnson. I'm the parent of a first grader at Emerald Elementary. I guess I'll say ditto to what's been said before about the Universal Breakfast Program. To my knowledge, we already have a successful program, 7:30 to 7:50 in the morning for those who can't get breakfast or for reduced rates, to my knowledge. I feed my son every morning before I send him off to school. The one slant I will take on this, however, is that I have a sample menu of what's being served. In my particular case, my son's allergic to dairy. It's not lactose intolerance, it's hives and stops breathing. So the menu that you guys have here, 2/3 of it to 3/4 of it's dairy. I don't want to have my child sit through this and he can't eat most of what's being served that day while everybody else around him is eating. I guess my wife and I could overcome that and send him something to school every day to eat. Most days he does bring his own lunch to school because what they serve in the cafeteria is laden with dairy. So I would just ask that you folks consider that if this does go forward, to diversify the menu to help out with those kids that do have allergies. And I guess the other thing I would say too, my son is on an IEP, and 20 minutes a day taken away from him of non-instruction is not good for him. He needs all he can get. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Christine Snyder, followed by Beverly Ketchel.
Hi, I'm Christine Snyder. I'm third grade teacher at Emerald Elementary, and this is my partner, Vicki. I'm speaking for the homeroom classroom. I want to put some real minutes on our day. When a student comes to our school, they spend 6.5 hours in our class. When we subtract lunch and recess, we're down to 5 hours and 45 minutes in our homeroom classroom. Then we subtract another 45 minutes for PE, art, and music. I'm now faced with 5 hours with my students. At our school, we have a program called Guided Reading, which is essentially a pull-out for all the children to go out into small groups for reading, which leaves me as a homeroom classroom teacher with 4 hours and 15 minutes with all of my students. Since we are a school with high needs, we have title reading and we have title math. We have, of course, special ed and ESL. If a student has one pull-out for another 45 minutes, I'm left with 3 hours and 30 minutes a day with that student in my homeroom. If a student has 2 pull-outs, which many of my students do, and many of our teachers have students with at least 2 pull-outs, we are left with 2 hours and 45 minutes a day with that student. And although we only have 2 hours and 45 minutes a day with that student, as a homeroom classroom teacher, I'm still responsible for teaching that student math, science, health, social studies, language arts, which includes writing, spelling, handwriting, and reading. If you add breakfast to that, another 15 minutes, I have 2 hours and 30 minutes for that child. In 24 years of teaching, I've tried to do my best to improve every year, find more time for each and every one of my children, and at this point, to be asked by the Education Center, my administrators, to now find time to feed my students breakfast, I'm asking you, please consider to let us feed our children that need to be fed outside of instructional time in our new cafeteria. Whether it's the way we've been feeding them or the new universal breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Beverly Ketchel. Not here. John Webb, who will be speaking for 4 minutes.
All right. Thank you and good evening. Everybody loves breakfast. Not. At the moment, the district is pressing for universal breakfast, or classroom breakfast as it might be described, to be implemented in classrooms at Emerald after the school day is started. Our school is constantly involved in a struggle to improve student achievement, and time is very precious. Classroom breakfast would reduce teachable instructional time by approximately 15 to 20 minutes per day. This is 20 minutes we can't spare so kids can eat at their desks, some for the second time, as most have already eaten at home.
Considering our school did not make adequate yearly progress last year, reducing our instructional time should be enough to put a halt to the implementation of Classroom UB on its own. In addition, now I've learned that 5th grade band and orchestra will probably be held during instructional time, not before or after school or at lunch recess as it has for the last several years. The implementation of these two programs will cause me, as a 5th grade teacher, to lose about 3 hours of time per week that I could otherwise use to teach school. Our custodial staff will also be enormously impacted by universal breakfast. We expect the custodian to have to spend about 10 minutes per classroom in removing trash, cleaning desks, spot cleaning spills on carpets, etc. With 17 classrooms, this comes to an extra 170 minutes per day for the custodian to spend in addition to his regular duties. Our school already has a pest problem. Mice and ants are constantly reported in everybody's room. Whole classes eating and spilling crumbs and milk on a daily basis is not the remedy for that problem. Another issue is the increased waste generated by UB. For example, currently as seen on the BVSD website and with the way kids at Emerald eat breakfast today, they get a washable cup and help themselves to organic milk from the milk machine. It works well, kids love it, and the amount of trash is greatly reduced. With the proposed universal breakfast, that goes away. We're back to wax-coated cartons of non-organic milk. This is a backward step considering what Boulder Valley has tried to do to increase the use of organics and reduce trash. Hope the public who has embraced these new eco-friendly initiatives don't mind. Next fall, we'll have a brand new expanded cafeteria at Emerald. How do I explain to parents and students why they can't eat breakfast in it? There's no good explanation. What would taxpayers think after Emerald's portion of the bond money went for something that ends up being underused? This taxpayer is not happy about the proposed limited use to the new cafeteria. It's a room to eat in. Why don't we use it? By abandoning the current breakfast program, which works just fine for all, and instituting universal breakfast, food services can take advantage of Emerald's status as a school of poverty and receive substantial funds from the federal government. By serving universal breakfast in the classroom, there's a captive audience of potential eaters, and so food services can offer breakfast to every student and thereby collect the highest amount of federal aid, regardless of how many kids actually eat the food. I find this disturbing and am alarmed that BVSD would allow food services to try to balance their failing budget on the backs of students of poverty. If food services is not financially sustainable, maybe other changes need to be made regarding food service at the district. I've had the privilege of working at Emerald for almost 20 years now. In that time, I can't think of any single issue that has not divided the staff to some degree, until now. This issue has done something to the staff that I have never seen. It has totally united them. No one, from teachers, custodians, parapros, to specialists and administrators, is in disagreement on this issue. We all feel this program would be a wrong fit for our school. So board, please don't let BVSD become a slave to government rules that don't fit our schools and district so we can squeeze a few extra dollars from them. This program is a bad fit here, and it is not in the best interest of students at Emerald. Nobody wants to put an end to breakfast at Emerald. Our current program is more than adequate to service the needs of our students. As the saying goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone who signed up to speak tonight that I missed? Okay. That concludes public participation.
Could I comment on the universal breakfast issue briefly? Would that be acceptable?
Sure. I was going to ask for an RFI, but if...
Okay. Well,
okay.
Yeah. Let's do both. I think there's a lot we can say in a write-up and share with the board and with the school community. And I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and sharing your concerns. We can work together to work out some of these issues. But, I have to disagree with the last speaker in this notion that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We do think that we can be getting a lot better student achievement from our high poverty schools in the district. And I think the question as to whether universal breakfast is effective has been answered in the research. I've been spending some time the last few days looking at this. The American Federation of Teachers on their website has some very strongly worded position papers on this subject. The NEA, National Education Association, has spoken out about the effectiveness of universal breakfast. The research is clear, and I can share summaries of it with you if you like. this really isn't about making money. The money that we generate gets poured back into the school to pay for the program. But this is about raising student achievement. I'd like to think that we can work together to resolve the specifics of how we implement it. But I'm going to need a lot more convincing before I believe this is harmful to kids and not in the best interest of kids. The research on it is just clear and compelling as far as I can tell. And I'm happy to share that with your faculty and come out and talk more about it if you like.
Okay. Board communication.
I'll start. I was going to say more, but yesterday we got an email which has profoundly affected me and my family. Yesterday afternoon, I opened up my mailbox, and there was an email about a threat at Boulder High. And Boulder High has had lots of threats this year, I think 5 or 6. My daughter's a freshman. The first one I got panicked me within the first 2 weeks of school starting. Now I've just gotten used to it. This one, I have been profoundly upset. And I talked to the principal today, and I said I was going to say something at the board, so I am. This particular message is very targeted. It says, KKK is back, all blacks will die on April 16th. And then a racial slur that I would never utter. And when I read this email, I thought of my daughter's friend that she's been playing basketball with since 6th grade. And her brother, I thought about the assistant director who just stood up here and received an award. All the other girls that she plays basketball with. And I thought, because of this, they are afraid to come to school on Friday because of the color of their skin. This is not acceptable. We've been working hard on our climate here in the district. We've made improvements, and we are going to take steps backwards at Boulder High. And I'm upset about this. It's not right. It's not acceptable. My son said, well, maybe this is something that one of the kids heard at home, and I can't regulate what people think and how they value people. But I can say that we will not accept this sort of behavior at our schools. And I would not like to see this ever again. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members? Jim?
Thank you, Leslie, for sharing that. I'd like to extend a congratulations to all the scholar athletes of BVSD, the state champions who are with us tonight, and those who participated and worked hard in practice. I'd like to say a special something to the Broomfield girls. Their 4th championship. This is my 2nd year of being able to take my daughters to such a classy group. Their championship was, their game was just filled with wonderful sportsmanship, and they should know that they are role models for the younger generation, and I thank them for that. I also want to thank the district for all the hard work they did this year in going out to the public and holding budget forums wherever and whenever people wanted them. I know they were highly attended, and I thank you for doing that. I think our budget that's going to come forward is going to be the stronger and more understood for that. I'd also like to put a special thank you to the district. They are taking a step at Ryan Elementary School, which is right next to my home school, of asking the parents in the school community, is the math and science focus that they've had for the last few years still what is desired for their school? This is continuous improvement. This is self-reflection. This is involving the community and the parents in the decision-making for what is their wish for their school. I thank you for doing this and support that decision. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Other board members? Elaine?
I just have a couple comments to make on a variety of topics. First off, I totally support the superintendent in his statements about universal breakfast. This is work that's not going on just in Boulder Valley. It's going on across the nation and across the state. Just this past week alone, I was part of a webinar and presentation that went out to across the country from the feds about the research connection between nutrition, physical activity, and student achievement. Once again, I think we're faced with decisions that often put the needs of adults ahead of the needs of students. I don't believe that children in poverty should be singled out and asked to go to a cafeteria to get meals that are free and reduced lunch meals. I don't think it's fair to identify young students as students of poverty. I also do not believe that hungry students learn. And I think I 100% support the work that we are doing in this district to make sure that all students have a meal. For some of our students, breakfast and lunch are the only meals that they get. It's hard enough living in that kind of environment. I don't think those students need to be singled out by being asked to go to the cafeteria to get their meals because it's inconvenient for adults who might be burdened by passing out the food. I don't also think we should have lower expectations for children of poverty than we do for other students. I think that we need to meet the needs of all of our students in the classroom, but we also have a social responsibility to make sure that those children are not hungry. That, coupled with the strong research connection that shows increased student achievement in those schools where children are fed, clothed, feel safe, and have the opportunity to move around, as well as have teachers who have high expectations for them regardless of their background. So I am very supportive, and Chris, I would ask you in an RFI to please share the research that you have with others, as well as I would like to see the data on the implementation of the Universal Breakfast Program in our other high-poverty schools. And I would support having universal breakfast across the district in every school, regardless of the poverty status. Secondly, I received an email today that I was quite surprised at. It's more upbeat than Leslie's email, but I do have to say, Leslie, when I did see what had happened at Boulder High, it made me wonder sometimes what's going on in our community. We're supposedly one of the best educated communities in the country. We talk a lot about tolerance. We spend a lot of money in this district on issues of equity. And to see these kind of behaviors, it's terribly sad. And I often think that your son is right. We have to look to the adults for modeling the behavior we'd like to see in our students. But on another note, the other email I received today announced that Francie Anhut will be leaving as the CEO of Impact on Education. My relationship with Francie goes back many years, long before she came to Impact on Education. What I have seen both personally and professionally from Francie is someone who sets a goal and always, always exceeds it. The work you have done for Impact on Education has been mind-boggling. You have more than tripled the size and the revenue that comes into that organization, and all of those dollars directly affect students in the Boulder Valley School District. Personally, I'd like to thank you for your years of service as the Director of Impact on Education. I think your board will be faced with a very challenging prospect at replacing you, because I don't think you are replaceable in what you've in. I don't think anyone could come in and quadruple that organization today like you did then. I hope that your commitment to students in Boulder Valley School District does not leave when you leave your position. And I thank you for the support that you have given to our students and your dedication. My final comment is that I will not be at the budget work session next week. I don't want anyone to construe or misconstrue my absence as not caring or having opinions on this issue. It's my understanding that Lori Albright will also not be at that work session, and I would like everyone here, as well as the public, to know that we have arranged time to get all of the same information as everybody else so that we will be prepared to engage in budget discussions on the 27th. Thanks.
Thank you. Lori.
Well, thanks, Helene. Half of my announcement, right? No. Actually, I won't be here either, but I will be here for the next board meeting. I was going to shift gears a little bit here. I went to a meeting that was presented by Colorado Futures. There were probably, 75 to 100 people. I was estimating how many people were in the room here in town on April 1st, actually. And it was a very interesting process where we all used clickers to respond to questions. And these same questions had been asked around the state to many different communities. And what was fascinating to me was, without going into a lot of detail about it, was at the very end, they summarized what our opinions were about the Constitution and about the Colorado Constitution and about what we as citizen leaders, and there were people from the county, from the city, from a lot of different organizations, what we thought about and what we were interested in having Colorado and our community look like was very, very similar to the responses of other communities. So it was fascinating to see that even though in some ways Boulder may think that we're real different, in a lot of ways we're real similar. We want the same things. We want a government that functions. We want schools that function. We want services for our people. And it was pretty clear that our citizens are beginning to realize that our government doesn't run on fumes, that we need support and public support for the kind of infrastructure that we're looking for. So I am very excited to see what this group of people comes up with in terms of a statewide effort to think about government in a bigger picture for what we're looking for. So anyway, it was a great meeting. I'll keep you informed. Some of us were there. Jenny, you were there, and I can't remember Ken, or anyway, I had a good time. It was good. So thank you. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Jenny?
I remembered to turn on my microphone. It's a first for me. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Teachers for Emerald from coming out tonight. I've heard a little communication on the subject of universal breakfast, and I hope, Chris, that you'll work with the staff there to address some of those concerns. I'm pleased to see that what I think I'm hearing from you all is that you're driven by concern for your students and how you can provide for the education your students need in an already very limited day. The more I read about public education, the more that the budget shortfalls that we're facing really grieve me, because one of the things I think that we would really benefit a lot of our students is a longer school day and a longer school year. So I know we're working within tight constraints, and I hope we'll be able to work some of those things out. I'd also like to mention, and I don't know if anybody's thought about this, but I've been thinking about universal breakfast and the way it would have affected my family, because that was one of the meals that we actually, it was rushed, but we always had breakfast together. And it sounds to me like that is a concern in the Emerald community too, is are you going to be, making that one less meal that families eat together in the Emerald community. And I do know that the research also supports families eating meals together, and whether it's breakfast or dinner, that does concern me a little bit, so I think it bears thinking about. Then I'd like to talk about a meeting I went to today called Great, by an organization. It was Great Education Colorado, actually, but the Great Futures Organization, and along those lines, I'd like to thank BVGT for being part of that, and Impact on Education for being part of the Great Futures Organization. The specific issue they're talking about is legislation in front of the state legislature, which would allow us, the voters, to decide whether we want to fund public education or not. Debbie Benefield has introduced a bill that would put in front of the voters in the fall a referendum to allow the state legislature to raise taxes to pay for public education, preschool through university level. Now there's a thought. I think perhaps we're the only state in the country that doesn't allow that right now. And for more information, I hope people will consider contacting their state legislators. I know that many of the Boulder contingent are co-sponsors of this bill or have already agreed to support it. And I don't know if it's possible for us to, as a board, adopt a resolution supporting it, but I'd like to consider that. Because I think it's really similar to some things we've already supported, and I think it's very important to keep this conversation going. For people who are in the audience who are interested in supporting this, again, contact your legislators. Consider appearing at the state legislature on either April the 19th or Thursday, April the 29th. They're hoping to, even if you can voice your support publicly, that would be great, but otherwise they're hoping just to pack the meeting rooms that they've reserved for these hearings. I'm going to try to make part of the meeting if I can myself. And again, you can go to the greatfuturescolorado.org/decide website for more information. And then I'd like to just say, that's my high school. Broomfield High School is the high school where my kids went to, and I'd like to say that not only is it a great sports high school, but it's also, under Ginger's principalship there in the last 10 years, it's also a place where all kinds of kids can excel. I went to their production of South Pacific this week. So they have a great drama program, and they also have great academics. I know that, that both of my kids are participating in engineering programs at CSU right now and feel very well prepared for those really high-level programs because of the classes that they were able, the advanced classes they were able to take at Broomfield High School. So it's not just a sports school, it's a school for, and it's a school where kids feel safe and welcome. So I'm proud to have students who are alum there. And thank you for your concerns too. I think that that can happen at any of our schools, but it's really tragic, and we need to speak out against that kind of hatred. That's all.
So I've had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to meet with a group that have taken it upon themselves to try to understand what's going on with the budget crisis in public education. This group is composed of teachers, parents, students, and taxpayers. And there are a number of business people involved in this group. And I'm really glad to see and encouraged that they're really looking in and trying to understand, how we spend our money. Not only how we spend our money, but how we report it and how people understand it. Particularly in the time right now that we're facing with budget cuts, I think it behooves us all to try to understand what's going on with our budget, what our values are, where we place our money, and the better job we can do at communicating that, throughout our district. I think the better off we will be in terms of people actually working together and shedding more light than heat on the subject. And there's been both shed, recently. There were a number of, they're still developing some recommendations and some input as to how the business model is. Schools are a little bit different. School districts are different than businesses, and we need to understand that. But I'm encouraged that there may be some things that are worth considering for us in some of their recommendations. So I know a number of the board members and staff have met with them, and there's some work going on. So I encourage this to continue. I think it'll help us all to get on the same page as we enter into our budget process, adoption process. I think we've been in the process for a long time, but in the actual adoption process here over the next few months, to keep our ears and eyes open and understand things rather than reacting to what we might hear in the media or secondhand. Because we're talking about some very important decisions we have to make that will impact our children, and we need to make the right decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of things have already been said. I want to thank Leslie for speaking out as she did. I have to say, when I got that email, I felt the same kind of outrage. It was kind of a bad afternoon for me when I saw that. I'm hoping it's an isolated incident, and I'm hoping that we can find the people who are involved and try to prevent these sorts of things from happening. And Jenny, I believe we're going to hear from the Great Education Colorado on the 27th, which is the next meeting. So I believe that's already on our agenda. So, and finally, I really want to thank everybody who came out. Nobody should feel nervous coming up and talking to us. We really do appreciate hearing from the community. We know it takes an effort to get out here, to spend an evening with us. It's a very important part of democracy for people to make their voices heard. You can make your voices heard a lot of ways, but it's certainly very important for us to hear your voices. So don't hesitate to come, and don't be afraid to address us. And I think that's probably it. So with that, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is, we're going to our information items. The first agenda item is the budget update.
Yeah, I was just waiting to see if we. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and get started with this then. Seems like just yesterday that we agreed to do a series of budget presentations over the course of the spring as we develop the budget, and this is the fifth of those and final one before leading up to next week's budget work session. So here we go. Our budget development process, November through April, has involved input from a variety of different constituent groups and stakeholders, all leading up to next week, the board work session, and the development of a preliminary budget that we will bring forward in late April, proposed budget in late May, and an adopted budget in June. So what we're going to summarize this evening is what we've heard from the community forums and surveys and various means, and then what we've done with that information and where we're going. As I mentioned, we've surveyed parents and staff. We ask standard questions, but we also have ample room for comments. We held a number of budget forums, 20 altogether. Our District Accountability Committee has a standing budget committee, and they've provided us some very thoughtful input for this process. And then first ever superintendent, well, not first ever, actually, we found history of previous superintendents having budget advisory committees, but our newly constituted budget advisory committee provided a lot of thinking for us as well. So, parent and staff survey, I'll leave this up here for a minute so our audience can kind of digest some of this, but the light blue line indicating parent feedback, the purplish line staff feedback, pretty consistent between the two groups with some slight variations. But the number one answer was for us to cut here first at the education center and keep cuts as far away from classrooms and schools as possible. And it gets a little less clear as you move down, but there was definitely some energy behind the notion of spending emergency reserve money as a strategy. People kind of lined up on both sides of that issue, actually. The way we asked this question gave us some results that led us to believe that people see class size cuts as an acceptable way to save money, if not a desirable way, but an acceptable way in tough times. And then across the board, salary freeze. We asked this question about the state of Colorado to sense whether people thought relief was on the horizon coming from the state, or if we were going to need to really look inward to solve these problems. Athletics, et cetera. So some common themes that emerged: cutting the administrative level, freezing, cutting salaries. Quite a bit of conversation in our budget advisory group, with some impact on education members I've talked to about this, and in the budget forums, also came up in DPC, District Parent Council, this notion of our KH policy and some I think I would summarize the conversation to say that people understand the way we have constructed KH. That's our fundraising policy that limits or prohibits the use of fundraised money for licensed staff. And I think people generally understand the intent of that policy, but I think people feel like we don't quite have it right yet, that it's somewhat a work in progress, and that we need to continue thinking and talking about that. And that theme really came up in most of the forums we held in one way or another. Themes continued, and I won't read through all these, but give you a second to. Staff survey, common themes. We have explored some of these ideas, like a 4-day work week, to see kind of what kind of savings that would provide, and it's not the kind of savings that would get us out of this budget crisis, is the short answer. But a lot of good creative ideas came up. This notion of early retirement options is also something we're continuing to explore and try to find a way to do that is a win-win for employees and for the district. We do think there are some savings there if we hit the right sweet spot, but there are also some risks in doing it poorly. So before we launch on something like that, we really need to make sure that we have the right model. But it's under study. We've talked about the budget forums. Of course, when you start talking about budget cuts, it's a really good way to dramatically increase the participation in forums. And we had single forums with over 75 people. Again, the themes that we've talked about, class size is definitely a strong community value. A lot of conversation around transportation, and I think we need to think about, if not the services we provide, then the way we explain and interpret and make meaning out of our services, because there's quite a bit of misunderstanding about why we transport kids, how we transport kids, what it costs to transport kids. And really, it's a relatively small percentage of our constituents who benefit from transportation, but I think it's something that we need to continue to look at. We've worked pretty hard to find efficiencies in our transportation model and made some pretty sweeping changes several years ago when we changed the start times, flipped the start times for middle schools and elementaries. You remember that was about 4 or 5 years ago. But I think we still have some work to do to continue, in the spirit of continuous improvement, find ways to save money there. This notion of zero-based budgeting has come up a number of times, and we are looking into what that means in an environment like a public school system, where you have negotiated agreements and contractual obligations that do carry forward from year to year, because really the definition of zero-based budgeting is you don't carry any financial obligations forward from one year to the next, and that's pretty hard for us to do in a negotiated environment. So that's something interesting, worth talking about. But and I think, as Bill points out, it's not unlike what we did, where we really stripped back our budgets and asked people to make some tough value decisions at the school base. But we're open to learning more about that, seeing what it really looks like in a school environment. Again, summary of the school meetings that we held at each level all over the district. Common themes, again, not unlike the themes we saw in the parent survey. There is some willingness to consider pay cuts that showed up in the survey results that you know, a spirit that people are willing to kind of, everybody takes some kind of pay reduction. Not universal, but certainly we picked up on that trend. We're looking at alternatives to textbooks, both as a way to be more contemporary in our purchasing of instructional materials and as a way to save money. And I think it's probably, there's less savings there than there is really efficiencies there. We can provide digital content and do some pretty cool things educationally, but it's not necessarily cheaper is the short version of that. Again, some of these themes keep coming up. District Accountability Committee has provided us the following. This is a summary of a nice report that they've given us, and I think we could share that report with the board if we did. Okay. There's support for the target 1, which is the target that we landed on for the schools, the 2.25. District Accountability Committee really asked us to think long and hard about other alternatives besides option 2 and option 3, tier 2 and tier 3. But it was kind of a moot point. We had already locked in on the target 1. They supported the way we cut deeper and harder at the central office, thought that was the right thing to do. They interestingly recommend against touching any of our reserves at this time. I think they studied that issue pretty thoroughly and thought at length about it. It contradicts some of the information we received from other feedback sources here, but that's okay. A lot of this information is contradictory because we pitched a wide net. We pulled a lot of different people. Again, support and encouragement for us to continue to involve a lot of people in the budget development process. They made some recommendations: continue finding creative solutions to further cost savings, maintain equity goals of the district in an environment of increasing fundraising, and they spoke directly to this issue of KH, kind of the spirit that we appreciate the commitment to equity, but we're not sure you quite have got it right yet. Keep thinking about it, keep working on it, the whole fundraising in relation to equity issue. And they really wanted us to try and quantify the impact of these cuts, which is an interesting conversation. How do you know that the cuts have gone too far? How do you know they were in the right place or the wrong place as they relate to our goals and to student achievement? And how are we measuring that? And to be thinking about that as we go into it was sound advice. Budget Advisory Committee, we've talked about 15 standing members from local cities, higher ed, and employee groups, 16 at-large members who applied through a process and were selected. We've met for several months, and we're making some good progress. They're advising, they're looking at some long-range issues, and they have formed a series of subcommittees reviewing a variety of topics. The subcommittees are salary, benefits, and compensation, class size, fundraising, volunteer and equity issues, administrative overhead, efficiencies, curriculum, and special ed. And what these subcommittees are doing are really thinking deeply on these topics to come back to the larger group and make some recommendations saying, we've gone and looked at your $30 million expenditure in special education, and we've compared it to some other districts, and we have the following recommendations about that. So that's an example, but that's the way they've chosen to do their work and making good progress there. Most of these are more long-range kinds of strategy conversations that may not necessarily impact this year's budget, but will definitely influence and shape future budgets. So what we are doing, what we have done, collected 3 preliminary cut targets for schools and department budgets. We implemented the target 2 at the Ed Center and increased staffing ratios by 1 at the schools. We we had a lot of conversation with our budget advisory council committee about how we project enrollments, because as you know, our enrollment projection directly drives our funding stream. And so what we're really doing is projecting revenue, and you come in too high or you come in too low, that's problematic. So our thinking has changed quite a bit around enrollment projections, and we have landed on a mid-range, and that's been influenced also by the budget advisory committee, but also by the science teachers that we've been in dialogue with. We announced the Target 1 cuts at the schools. Well, we still have just really begun negotiations, so that's still a moving part in this whole budget development process. From next week's meeting forward, we have the work session, preliminary budget on the 27th, proposed budget on May 25th, and adopted budget on June 8th. And if we don't hit that on June 8th, we still have one more board meeting left in case we still need to. And that happens some years and some years not, but we're planning, we have a plan in case it's not adopted on the 8th. And that's the end of the slideshow, but I'm happy to entertain any questions or conversation. Bill and Leslie are here with me.
Board members. Lori.
I just have a big picture question. I mean, you acknowledged in the statements as you went through this that there was a lot of conflicting ideas. Raise class size, don't raise class size, cut administration, and maybe I would say we've cut enough.
That was the one where there wasn't a lot of conversation around, but yeah, I get your point.
But I'm just saying that there were a lot of different ideas where there was some conflict. How did your staff look at those ideas? I mean, how did you drill down into those ideas?
That's a great question, and it's an ongoing process. We filter it through what we know we can do and what we think is right. So when people are encouraging us to look at a 4-day week, well, we did. We looked at a 4-day week, and we talked about it, and we studied it, and we thought about it. We even did some cost analysis. But in the end, we made a professional decision that that was not right for this community, for this budget. The savings weren't worth it, and so we moved on. But there are tougher decisions to be made that really are value laden, and I hope we get into some of that conversation in the work session next week, because these aren't just our decisions. We will present you a synthesis budget that we think reflects the community opinions and values, but there's some room for give and take in there and conversation around it as well. We've also been exploring ways to use a more quantifiable process. We just met today with a gentleman who has a tool, the Backseat Budgeter, that allows, kind of through a clicker process, you've seen the clickers in science classes, to do community engagement with people and give them real-time feedback about a budget and about the trade-offs in a budget. So they can either do that in a group meeting or online individually. So if I increase class size by 1, what does that do to compensation? What are the legal issues of tampering with special ed expenditures, and what are the consequences of that? And so there are models out there that allow for that. And I think we've been bringing forward budgets for the last decade or so that are growth budgets. But when we get into this cycle of cut budgets, it really increases the need for much more input and dialogue about that. And so this is our first year of that, but unfortunately I think we're going to have a couple more years to practice and hone these skills.
Helene?
I have 2 questions. I saw multiple messages around fundraising and KH. It seems to me that actually the most comprehensive fundraising and the way the community could support the schools would be through a mill levy referendum type initiative. And I'm wondering, was that idea brought forward by our community?
I would say every forum, it came up. Usually about halfway through the forum, when people started to get really frustrated and concerned about the depth of these cuts, someone predictably would always ask, what's our way out of the wilderness here? How do we get out of this quagmire? How do we take charge of our destiny? What can we do to control the future? And then we would get into conversations about mill levy overrides, how that works, how it's different than a bond election, when those decisions are made, what the timeline is, what the process is. So yes, it always came up.
And it's my understanding from the past, I just want to make sure this hasn't changed, that were the board to decide we wanted to go forward with the mill levy, that decision would be in August, is that correct?
Historically, yes, and legally. I think there are some drop
Right,
dead
there's a
dates that are
legal,
right around there, yeah.
Right, and you could, I think in the past, the board has asked us to kind of take the summer and look over it while we take the break for the summer and then come back officially and pass the resolution in August.
Okay, and so is that something that were we to decide that we wanted to do that, that would be a formal request from the board to staff to do that?
That's how it's occurred in the past, yes, for us to go forward.
So that could be a logical outgrowth of our budget conversation, for example. Okay, my other question comes, and I believe you explained this through an email or an RFI, but I'd like to have it explained to the public. When you say in your slide that a decision was made to increase the staffing ratios by 1, that has been, I think, interpreted by some in our community that a decision had already been made to increase class size. Can you explain what that means when you adjust staffing ratios prior to us having actually adopted a budget?
Well, the notion generates about $2.5 million toward the $10 million shortfall that we have. So in our preliminary budget, we have used that as a strategy. But it's not a decision until the board drops the gavel on the budget in June. So anything that we are suggesting or proposing in the budget is open to dialogue.
So it's just been proposed in the budget, it hasn't been communicated and implemented at the school?
We're doing several things in parallel, and one of them is staffing schools and building schedules and hiring. So yes, our schools are operating under the assumption that that will go through. But if it were to change, there is ample time to respond to that change. So we have sent staffing out. We always send our staffing out to our schools the day before spring break on that Friday. And they did receive staffing that has that change in ratio.
And have subsequently employees that would be perhaps in risk of losing their positions been notified as a result of this? Has that already occurred at the school level?
It is occurring. Becky?
Yes, we have been meeting with employees individually on that are being affected by the budget reductions, and in some cases we actually do have a reduction in force where there will be some individuals actually laid off. In other cases, it's a reduction of the level of the position, whether it's full-time down to part-time, but we have been meeting with individuals currently.
There are timelines in the contract that we have to follow. So we don't have the luxury of waiting until the budget is approved and then making those notices.
So what happens if the board decides that our value is about maintaining class size because of the importance of both teacher workload as well as student achievement? How do you roll back, or would you roll back the decisions that it sounds like are already being made?
Yeah, please.
Well, currently, we are doing those notifications because we do have to plan ahead, and most of our negotiated agreements for our classified employees particularly do require a 30-day notice ahead of their layoff. So basically, we would just reinstate where we, those positions and undo the terminations. We haven't actually brought any layoffs to the board as yet, and those would come in a future personnel action. So, that at that point, we could undo that.
Everyone's contract goes through this school year, so they're still under contract, but we're really planning for next year. So there is time to change course.
Can I follow up to a question that she asked?
Sure, Lori, go ahead.
Are you finished? I just wanted to follow up with a question. I thought where you were going and what I'd like you to explain is the staffing ratio +1 and how that's different than class size.
Sure.
If you could talk about that.
Sure. Well, let's take a high school. Let's take a high school, say, the size of Broomfield High School. Most of our high schools have different staffing ratios. We have different staffing ratios for high schools, middle schools, and elementaries. And then within those levels, schools have different staffing ratios based on the demographic and the size and other variables. Those are the big ones. So every school has the staffing ratio, and say a school is 26-1. So we change that staffing ratio to 27-1. We do that to all 55 schools. That generates $2.5 million. But that 26-1 is not the class size. You can walk into a large high school and have 400 sections. Well, there's no way that all sections in that school are 26-1. Some of them are 15-1, and some of them are 35-1. And so for every class you have above that ratio, you probably have another class below that ratio. And schools make a lot of decisions at the school level about what classes will be offered and how big those class sizes are. So you're right, it's not the same as class size, and we never portray it as class size. It's a ratio.
Leslie?
I noticed also that the idea of early retirement came up in a few different groups, and I can understand that you wouldn't want to rush into this and not have a really good model. So I assume this wouldn't be used this year as part of the budgeting process, but perhaps next year or years out.
I would say we have not ruled out this year, but we are nowhere near having a model in place that we have been able to model. Can you model a model? But we have not rolled out a model that we are satisfied is fiscally sound. We're looking at what other school districts are doing, and we're thinking hard about it, putting pencil to paper, but we've not landed on that magic amount. We're really incentivizing retirement. So we're trying to offer up an amount of money that causes people to retire who would not have ordinarily retired. And so what is that amount of money? What's the interplay between that and our 110 program? Do you get one? Do you get both? Or do you have to choose? So we still have some policy questions and some financial questions. But I think we believe there are some savings in retirement incentives that we want to execute. We have used them in this district in the past. We just have to find that model.
Okay, thank you.
Jenny, did you have your hand up?
No, but
Okay.
I can force myself to ask some questions. First of all, let me see, what did I have? I'm sort of interested in the conversation that's been going on about the reserves, because I know at the budget forums, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what constitutes our reserves. And then, so what particularly interested me was what DAC's reasoning for not touching our reserves, because, so yeah.
I believe in the conversation having with DAC is about what the future looks like, and that it is not particularly rosy at the state level. And so concern around dipping into that too early is really the concern around that.
Okay, so it just has to do with planning into the future. So they're not saying never, they're just saying not this year, but maybe.
Right, this might not be the right time to do it.
Down the road, which is another reason for people to get on board and support DECIDE. So, and then I met with the science teachers last week, and they are really in love with Cherry Creek's model of budget keeping, and I'm wondering, what's so great about Cherry Creek? That's sort of maybe off topic a little bit.
I'm sure we can learn budgeting strategies from Cherry Creek and lots of other school districts. There are many right ways to do a budget, and we think ours is pretty good, but not flawless. So we're happy to learn from Cherry Creek or anybody else. But we think our model serves us pretty well. And again, we could exchange our right way of doing things with somebody else's right way of doing things, have a different way of doing things, and not necessarily have added any value. So before we just change our strategies. But we have learned some important lessons from that group about communication, not so much how we budget or the values behind it, but how we communicate our decisions and explain those decisions. So we're definitely ready to make some changes, and I would think we have a meeting next week on Tuesday, I think, with that group to talk about some of that and get some better understanding. So we're happy to learn from Creek or anybody else. But I don't think they have any magic bullet. By having said that, I mean, I don't think there's anything outrageous, different, or special about theirs. It's high quality, and so is ours.
And along the same lines, I'd like to thank you, because I actually think that if you get that we have a lot of information out there, and I've been on our website to look at our frequently asked questions, and once you started updating that, I think there's a lot of really good information on our website and in our fat budget booklet and in our skinny budget booklet. I'd like to thank staff.
Thanks.
for
These folks deserve all that credit. They've worked very hard.
I probably have some other questions.
Jim?
Thank you. Just going to go back to the class size and talking. My daughter was talking to a 5th grader yesterday who is in a different district who is in a class of 37, going to 39 next week. So I was wondering if we have any comparison data for other metro districts, as well as what information we have about how class size relates to student achievement.
Well, we can do some comparative work, but one of the things that we've learned in working with these science teachers is that comparisons across school districts are challenging. It's not always apples to apples. They're not impossible, but they are challenging, and they take a lot of time to do. I believe we have the most desirable class sizes overall in the metro area. It is definitely something we value and we have invested in heavily. They're not perfect, they're not ideal, but they're pretty darn good. And I hear those kinds of stories often from other school districts that have much higher class size. Secondly, there is research about class size, particularly I think when you have very small class sizes, and I'm summarizing and I'm doing something which is kind of sloppy, which is not citing my sources, but we can definitely do some RFI kinds of, if you're interested. But generally speaking, very small class sizes, 15, 18, definitely have an impact on student achievement. When you get up into the 20s, the student achievement relationship to class size diminishes. When you get around the difference between 25 and 28, you're not going to see it. And particularly if the teacher's style of teaching doesn't change. So when you're teaching to a group of 30, the same way you're teaching to a group of 25, you're not going to see a difference. But if the teacher's style changes and there's more individualization in the smaller class size, then you can get some benefit from class size. But it really has a lot to do not just with the class size difference, but the teaching style adjusting to the class size. Does that make some sense? Okay. Tom?
So, do you have a good handle on how much money we could actually raise with a mill levy override? We've done that already in the past up to a certain percentage, right? Maybe 13, 14%, and we're limited, to 25 by law?
Right, the statute recently changed. It used to be 20% of our total program, and so traditionally we've gone to our voters and asked for that 20% maximum, and then as our total program grows, then we get down back to around 15%. The law has recently changed, and we're now allowed to go for 25%, and we can ask not only for a flat dollar amount, but we could actually ask for an indexed, we could ask for example, 25%, so that it would continue to grow as our total program theoretically grows. Right now, because it looks like our total program will be going down, then that amount is starting to go down a little bit. And so right now we think we could get around $15 million if we did max to the 25% amount.
Okay. Any other last minute follow-ups? Okay, I don't really have. Okay, Jenny?
I really am a little disappointed. I'm a big supporter of the arts in this district, and I know our community is, but I'm a little disappointed when people come to us and say that the 5th grade music can't be cut at all. nothing, zero, when everything else is being cut. And while I'm understanding from what's going on that we're going to be preserving that program, and I'm glad because I know it benefits a lot of our students, and I've been very moved to hear from many of our students about the difference that music has made in their lives. I'm a little I just have to say that I'm a little disappointed when I hear people come to us and say that that can't be touched in the current economic climate.
Okay, thank you. I don't have too much to add other than I think some of the we've observed that there are some differing opinions on things, and I think that certainly what I've learned in my years on the board is that most of these things are trade-offs, and people sometimes describe it sort of like pushing on water. You push down in one place and something else goes up. So I think the next few months of discussion are really going to have to be looking at the interrelationship between these things. And lots of good suggestions were made that sound good in isolation. I think our trick as a board right now is to look at this whole package of things and try to make sense out of optimizing the whole rather than just adopting this particular idea over that particular idea, because I think what we're finding is that one person's waste is another person's favorite program, and it's going to be tough, but I think that's what our job is as we move forward towards our final budget in June. So thank you very much. I'm going to suggest that we take our break now so we can change our DVD, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes, please.
know, but I may say stuff. I don't want other schools
If
thinking.
everybody could take their seats, please.
Ellen's built me a little tower.
I'll be nice. Okay, now it's time. Take your seats, everyone, please. Our next information item is the instrumental music recommendation.
Whoa, thank you. Fourth, fifth, and sixth grade parents of students in the district, to instrumental music teachers, and to our principals. We did have a music data review group come in that consisted of both general music teachers, instrumental music teachers, and one very brave principal, Mr. Kent Kruger from Bear Creek. That group came together under the direction of Jill Gartland, who is our coordinator of music and art, and Shelley Landgraf, our HR representative, our director. And that group worked. They took all of that data, they looked at it, they made comments about it, they kind of cooked it down a little bit, and in the end, it really was clear that right now that there is support for continuing with moving forward with option 1. Now, option 1 is the same instructional programming that we've had for our 5th graders for the past years. The difference is that we will be staffing it according to enrollment. So this year we may have had a class of instrumental music with 3 students in it or 12 students in it, and another with 30 students in it. And what we're going to do is to balance that out in much the same way that we balance our classes. Our plan had been to introduce this now to our instrumental music students in 4th grade, but we think we have probably a better plan that will help us get through this spring and still give those allocations out. So we will be going forward with option 1. We will continue because of the discrepancy in the data, especially on some of the options that we saw discrepancies between what the parents had thought would be best and what teachers had thought would be best. We've also heard from a number of teachers, classroom teachers at the elementary level who believe that their opinion on this topic should be heard as well. And then there was quite a discrepancy, of course, between our elementary principals, who bring forward oftentimes the other opinions in the school, and the rest of the community. So our music data review group did look at those discrepancies, and they thought that they were worthy of further discussion. So next year we will be forming a task force. We'd like to have it an advisory task force, and that group will apply to be part of the whole picture, to look at the entire picture of our specialists at the elementary level. Because as we examined this issue, we realized that there were many other issues that came forward as a result of looking at instrumental music. So we do propose to get together a district-wide task force next year to start early in the year and to look at much more broadly at where our specials are in our district and how we can perhaps do a better job or at least address some of those issues that are longstanding. So I'm happy to take any questions from you.
Board members. Jenny.
I don't understand what it means to staff by enrollment. Are you saying that if like only 3 people signed up for woodwinds or whatever, that you wouldn't offer that at that school, or
No, that's a great question. This is, and Jill can come up here if she'd like and add to this, but we sat down actually today and looked at next year's 5th grade enrollment numbers, how many students we have planned for 5th grade next year. And then we looked at what their current enrollment patterns are. So we staffed it, or we will look at staffing it similarly. So if there were 3 students in a section this year of woodwinds, we could combine some sections, the woodwinds and the brass, actually, and in the way we do orchestra, where all of the string instruments meet together. In those schools where there are fewer students in those classes, we can combine those classes. So instead of there being 10 in brass and 3 in woodwind, there would be 13 in a brass and woodwind section.
So all students will get to take the instruments they want?
Yes. All students will get to take the instruments they want, and we will probably, as we're talking about it and Jill's talking to some of the teachers to get their feedback, it looks like we'll land on that happening next fall in the way it always has, where students can try the instruments out. They can, the teachers will demonstrate them, and then they will choose. But we'll staff it this spring for scheduling purposes.
So you're just going to assume that the trends will continue?
We're going to assume that, and then we'll have, just like we do with classrooms, in August we revisit the numbers. It'll be a little bit later for instrumental music, but if we find that we have more students than we thought we would have, we can add that additional FTE at that time. It really will be more effective staffing, much like we do the rest of the staffing in our district.
Lori?
So I'd like to follow up to the question about staffing. So do you anticipate keeping the same number of instrumental teachers next year, or do you anticipate that there would be a cut? I'm just trying to think of what the reality is, what the practicality is. I mean, like you talk about the difference between 3 and 13, and I get that, but are you planning cuts for next year?
We sure hope not, but we need to, there's, when we look at our allocation for instrumental, it's across all 3 levels. And so at this point, and with this not being decided up until at least this point, it's hard to get a good handle on that. We do have a retirement in orchestra, so that will open up sections in that area. But we don't quite know yet how that will pan out. Just today, we looked at what that would actually look like if we implemented it the way that Sandy just described, and how much FTE we could possibly save. It was around 1.0. So how that would be absorbed, we're not quite sure at this point.
So in a practical sense, a school that I know about where my kids went to school, we had 2 instrumental music teachers who came twice a week. One taught brass and one taught woodwinds, and one taught strings. So I guess we had 3. And what if there were 20 children in each one? Is that funded, do you anticipate that would be funded the same way next year? And what if it was 15 and what if it was 10? I'm just trying to get a feel for what the difference will be from at least what it was back in the dark ages when my kids were in elementary school, and what it is today. I just don't know what the level of staffing is.
So currently there is, all but 2 schools receive a total of 0.24 FTE, and that's 0.08 each for orchestra, for brass, and for woodwinds.
Okay.
So that might help just as a baseline. And 2 smaller schools receive just the 0.16 because they've already pretty much combined the brass and woodwinds. Okay. So we just want to look at that data and try to anticipate as best we can if it is more reasonable and more efficient to combine those classes. And what helped us to get there is we finally have information on IC about 5th grade instrumental music that has been really valuable. So as we looked at that, when we first knew that this was we're gonna have to deal with some kind of cuts like every other program in school is dealing with, we looked at that and saw there were 6 in a class and 5 in a class and a 3 in a class. And it's not uncommon in other districts where brass and woodwinds are combined, and certainly at 6th grade they're combined in their one class. So that's where where, as you know, again, we're looking at efficiencies, that made kind of the most sense. We haven't done this before, and so we're just did our first analysis this afternoon about what that might look like. And it was very helpful. Jonathan suggested and kind of recognized that this 5th grade class is fairly small across the district. So it's so helpful to look at this upcoming year's 5th grade classes, and we saw increases a lot, so that's going to help us to be even more accurate.
Okay. I'll be real curious to know what those are. Like, I assume you're figuring this out in the next month.
As soon as possible, because it really drives the master schedule. It's so hard to schedule. And all but one of our teachers that teaches the 5th grade also teaches at the secondary. So everyone's very anxious to move forward with that. And we are meeting with, wanted to make sure, continuing to be as transparent as possible, making sure that we listen to our teachers. And so Thursday I've called a meeting for anyone who wants to give us feedback on where we're at right now, and just trying to just give an opportunity for everybody.
Okay. Leslie?
Well, thank you for the staffing explanation, because my children did go to a small school, and I thought it was normal that there was just a band teacher and an orchestra teacher, and that was it, and everybody was combined. So we come from different perspectives, and it worked fine. The other thing I remember, when hanging out and talking to the moms, we have, in addition to great musicians, we have wonderful artists. I was excited to see my neighbor has her piece hanging in the Smithsonian right now, or in the National Gallery in Washington, D.C. And we also have PE, where, I think most parents of affluence probably get their kids into soccer and basketball or whatever with the Y, but kids of poverty probably don't have that, and PE is really an important way to expose them to different sports and allow them to perhaps excel and move on to sports in high school. So I'm really interested in the equity issue of, especially at 5th grade, when you've got 2 periods of PE, 2 periods of music, and then another one of orchestra and band, and only 1 of art during the week. And I hope you'll have, as you said, some of the 5th grade teachers involved too, because I know we got emails from 5th grade teachers saying how it impacts their classroom and their classroom planning. So I think it's really good that we're staying put for now and looking at it more deeply with a task force that'll hopefully be more inclusive of all the different people that are impacted. So thank you.
Thank you.
Elaine?
Well, I thank you for bringing forward your recommendation. I want to just be clear that there have been no changes made to our regular music program in this district. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I have received numerous emails from music teachers in this district who have been quite upset at the rhetoric and the portrayal of the change to instrumental music being getting rid of music in our district. And I think a lot of people are really unaware of how comprehensive our music program is. And to Leslie's point that, our students are receiving music education, and instrumental music is in addition to that. I am frankly surprised that we're ending up where we're ending up, because I do believe that there is inequity among the arts and how they're presented in our district. And I am really concerned that a group of organized parents and teachers have misrepresented this issue, I think, in the public. That there has been no discussion, and perhaps it's a board level discussion, about what is our overall vision and value around raising and educating students who have an awareness of all of the arts. And I believe that this debate has created an overemphasis on instrumental music at the expense, perhaps, of all of the other artistic forms of expression that students also come to school for. And I do believe it is inequitable, and I don't anticipate that this will be the last time we will be looking at instrumental music. But I'd like next time we look at it, to not look at it as an isolated programming decision, but rather a comprehensive dialogue about what is it we're looking to provide and how are we providing it. And I also think, to our speaker today, people should be pretty happy that we ended up where we are. And to come and tell us that this wasn't good enough in the era of budget cutting and the kinds of cuts we're making that are affecting student performance, you know, I just thought was a little unnecessary. Thank you.
We do hope that this task force next year will take this on as a whole issue of equity. And what we found as we were talking about these instrumental music issues is all of these other issues came up, and there was not the time to address that thoughtfully. So this plan, I think, is a good plan for us to take it forward in this way and look at the whole system, look at this systemically, and see how we can do it better for the future of our students.
That would be great.
Tom?
So, just so I understand, the difference between what we're proposing to do next year than what we've been doing is just to be more, do more planning for our staffing, to be as efficient we can be. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Instead of having one teacher for 3 students, we'll try to get more students in that class to be more efficient. So we're not planning to change any instruction that we're offering now, the curricula. It's just, let's be wiser with the way we use our staff, right?
Being more efficient so that if we have a class with 3 students, that will actually work better in a school that has 3 of brass or woodwind and 10 of the other, to bring them together.
Right. Now, how much do you think we will save?
Today, as we looked through all of the schools, our initial impact will be about a 0.96 FTE, up to a little bit over a 1, but right in that general range of 1 teacher.
Thanks.
Sure.
Go ahead, Laura.
So I always have these follow-up questions. 0.96, and how many do we have total now?
We have around 7 at 5th grade.
Okay,
Fifth
so
grade.
you're going from 7 possibly down to 6.
That's right.
Okay, that, yeah.
Jim?
Since this issue has been discussed for the last 6 weeks at the board, I'm going to regret asking this question, but will the task force be tasked with considering eliminating 5th grade instrumental music, or will they be specifically prohibited from bringing that recommendation forward and just be looking at all of the specials?
I think as we look at it systemically, everything will be open to a conversation, and where it goes, nobody knows at this point. But I think to say absolutely not, we're going to not address one or another, would be irresponsible. We want to look at it systemically.
Lori, one more.
Yeah, thanks. I had just one more comment. This has been a real eye-opening experience for me. This, in the 2.5 years that I've been on the board, I have never received this many emails. And as Helene points out, it could be a very organized group of parents. But in my experience, what the letters came from university professors, private music teachers, music vendors, businesses who are involved in music education. Some children wanting to take music when they finally got to 5th grade. Some said it changed their life after they left college and so on. I mean, it was just a very, very broad group of people. And I guess what I would hope for is that very same group of people with more accurate information might become more involved in supporting the arts in general. They're willing to speak up at one point and say, don't cut that program. But I would challenge them to get involved and get engaged and give you the support that you need in order to keep all of our programs to be really strong. Our community clearly values this program. We heard from them. And I just think it's something for us to keep in mind to how do we harness that energy and that support and that interest. But I would also say, in getting 400 emails, I didn't respond to them all, but I would just like to publicly thank the students who wrote. They were passionate, they were committed, they were interested, and they had wonderful things to say, and I appreciate that they took the time to write. And as I said, in my experience of being on the board, it is the single issue where I have heard from such a large group of committed students. So it was a good experience.
I just wanted to follow through with that. Although the survey that we put out to parents was specifically about music, a lot of the comments reflected that overall support for the arts across the district and the importance of it in a child's education. So I think that will be important information for us in the task force as well.
Well, this has been going on for more than 6 weeks. It's been going on for 6 years I've been on the board. And I mean, I really do want to say, certainly my personal commitment to the arts education, but I just want to point out what this district really has. We have 90 minutes of general music in elementary school, right? We have 45 minutes of visual arts, is that
50
correct?
minutes of art, 50 minutes of art a week, 90
Week,
minutes
a
of
week, right.
music, general music a week, 90 minutes of physical education a week,
Right.
and at 5th grade, the 80 minutes of instrumental music.
Right. We have adopted standards, we have a curriculum, we have assessments, we have goals. Our achievement and equity goals include the arts as a measurement. We track those every year. And so, I mean, I think for anyone to doubt that this district is committed to arts education and understands the importance of arts, just is not borne out by the data that we have. We put a lot of effort, we spend a lot of money, and we're very concerned and very rigorous, I think, in terms of art. And I think that we should honor that part of it. Obviously, these issues about class sizes and efficiencies are happening everywhere. I mean, we're getting this in language classes, and so I think, you know, for the public to expect that we would continue to have classes with 3 kids in them in the kind of situation that we're in right now is pretty unrealistic. And I don't think any of us are trying to eliminate music or trying to diminish the impact of these programs on our kids. But folks, we do have to get more efficient in how we deliver these programs. And, you know, there's always a trade-off between flexibility and efficiency. And in this particular case, because of our budget situation, we're going to have to give up on a little bit of flexibility, which may mean that we're going to have larger class sizes, maybe not as much individual attention. But I don't see that that necessarily equates to any kind of an intentional diminution of the importance of the arts or the effort that we put into the arts in this community. So I certainly would be very much against any large-scale cut in the arts program, but I think we absolutely have to look at the efficiency of our delivery in every program in this district, and we've got to seriously consider how we can improve these. And so I think we should have these kinds of conversations. I would hope that these conversations would be minus a large part of the emotion and the misinformation that has come out of these things. I mean, I think there are sane minds in this district, and I think if we put them together and we really look at the issues and we really stay focused on the kids and the standards and the curricula that we have adopted as a board, I think the kids will not suffer in any significant way. So thank you for the effort you've put into this. Let's keep going on it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Our next information item is indicators of success for students identified as talented and
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, school board members, Dr. King. My name is Jennifer Barr, and I'm the Advanced Academic Services Coordinator for the BVSD. This means that I oversee talented and gifted programming in our schools. I'd like to thank you for your interest in students who are identified as talented and gifted. I'd also like to thank Terry and Barry and Deborah for speaking and sharing their perspectives with us during the public participation this evening, and thank Jonathan Dings and Michelle DeBerry and Becky Wittenberg for helping me gather the data for tonight's presentation. Sandy, can you tell me how to get this? Oh, they will. Okay, thanks. The purpose of this presentation tonight is to share data with you that will show you, thank you, how students who are identified as talented and gifted are doing, to explain how we support these students through programming, and to share with you some of the ways we measure program effectiveness. I'll begin with these data that indicate success for students identified as talented and gifted. As you see here, students identified as talented and gifted have a low, unexcused absence rate. As you don't see here, but as you have in your board packets, students identified in grades 7 to 12 rarely drop out of school. Their annual rate is low compared to students statewide. And if you could see the graph, it would show oh, there it is. Thank you. Sorry. Actually, this is the next slide. So if you could see the dropout rate, there it is. You can see that it's low in BVSD compared to the state, and low compared to other students in the BVSD, which is a 1.5%. Students identified as talented and gifted in grades 7 to 12 have a high grade point average compared to all other students in BVSD. Discipline data tell us that students identified as talented and gifted are less likely than other students to be involved in disciplinary incidents. School climate data tell us that the parents of students identified as talented and gifted were at least likely as others to agree that their students were learning at or above the level they expected. And this data is not in your slide, but I do have data from athletics and activities that show an estimated 90% of middle school tag students participate in at least one activity, group, school club, or athletic sport. When we look at growth and achievement data, we see that students identified as talented and gifted are showing strong growth in mathematics. These students show high achievement in reading, writing, and math. Further, there is consistent strong growth in mathematics at all levels, with reading not as strong at the high school level. Since you asked me to look at growth data in our charter schools, if we compare growth model median percentiles and performance order district-wide, non-charter elementary schools outpace charter schools when it comes to tag growth, and non-charter middle schools do quite well. Here we see the district results for talented and gifted students from SchoolView. In mathematics, 95% of talented and gifted students are at or above proficient, and their median growth percentile is 60. In reading, 97% of talented and gifted students are at or above proficient, and their median growth percentile is 56. And in writing, 93% of talented and gifted students are at or above proficient, and their median growth percentile is 55. Next, I'll review identification data. Over time, as the total population of BVSD students increases, so do the number of students who are identified as talented and gifted. With the increased focus on identification, especially of underrepresented populations, we've seen a modest increase in the percent of BVSD students identified as talented and gifted. At the state level, about 10% of students are identified as talented and gifted. This data is from October Count 2009 special populations. We are aware of the underrepresentation of students who are English language learners and students from poverty in talented and gifted programs. In order to address this, we focused professional development, resources, and outreach so we can learn more about how to better identify and serve students who are culturally, linguistically, and ethnically diverse, as well as students who are economically disadvantaged. This data is also from October Count 2009 special populations. We have focused professional development, resources, and outreach to ensure that schools understand how to identify and serve all students. We've worked hard to ensure that the talented and gifted identification policy is implemented with fidelity in all BVSD schools. When we look at gender data from October Count 2009, we can see that we identify more male students as talented and gifted than female students. This trend has been in place for the last several years and mirrors a trend at the state level. Next, I'll talk about budget and programming. For the 9-10 school year, $1,349,222 were budgeted for talented and gifted programs in the BVSD. Of that total amount, $336,069 comprise the Advanced Academic Services budget, and the remaining dollars support other BVSD talented and gifted initiatives. For 10-11, we're not expecting a reduction in funding from the state. However, some FTE and programs were cut by 2.25% in order to meet budget reduction targets. Next, I'll explain how the total budget for talented and gifted programs is spent by breaking it down into 4 categories. Number 1 is program administration. This encompasses the district office staff, substitutes and books, and testing materials for schools. Category number 2 covers district-sponsored fairs and competitions such as Science Fair and History Day. Number 3 is student activities. This category includes early access for highly advanced gifted students, as well as resources to support and engage talented and gifted students and their families. Category number 4 is the instructional support for talented and gifted initiatives. This includes TAG advisor allocations, science research seminar FTE, Lafayette options such as the pre-engineering focus at Angevine and Centaurus, and the talented and gifted focus at Lafayette Elementary. It also includes district-wide post-secondary options for early college enrollment. One of the most frequent questions I answer is, what is the BVSD Talented and Gifted program? The district-level programming components are those that are consistently implemented in the schools who participate in talented and gifted programming. The school-level programming components look different in each school and are customized to meet the needs and fit the philosophy and resources of the school. For example, one school might be able to offer 4 levels of math instruction for their 4th graders, where another school might offer only 3. One site may have discussion groups for students at lunchtime, where another school may focus on fairs, competitions, and activities. There are many good choices for BVSD students who are gifted and talented, but sometimes the choices can be overwhelming for students and parents who are trying to find a good match. I'll address this at the end of this presentation and again in a few weeks when I'll be back to talk about the improvements and expansions to talented and gifted programming in the future. Next, I'll explain the measures in place to monitor program effectiveness. At the school level, all talented and gifted students are required to have an advanced learning plan, which documents a student's talented and gifted programming and their goals. At the district level, we're able to monitor advanced learning plans in Infinite Campus, and as you've seen in this presentation, multiple data points help us measure how we're doing. Finally, in the spring of 2013, we'll have a formal audit via the Colorado Department of Education's Gifted Education Review process. Very quickly, I'd like to share with you an example of how we monitor advanced learning plan goals. We can look at the goals from last school year and determine whether or not the goals were attained. We can also look at the goals for this year and determine what kinds of goals were written. Currently, I'm working with IT as well as planning and assessment to prepare district-wide reports that will show us how students are progressing toward their goals. In the future, I'd like to be able to determine what % of students at a specific grade level are attaining their academic goals in their area or areas of strength. In summary, as a whole, students identified as talented and gifted are doing well. We've made some strides, but still have work to do in the identification of students from culturally, linguistically, and ethnically diverse students, as well as students from poverty, and we'll work to increase our ability to measure and monitor program effectiveness. So what's next? I'll be back on April 27th to talk more specifically with you about programming. I'll share some proposed improvements. I'll talk about differentiated programs for highly gifted students. I'll outline our expectations for schools, and I'll address ways to improve and expand programming in a climate of diminishing resources. Again, I thank you for your interest in this topic and for the invitation to speak tonight. And I'm happy to address your questions.
Questions, comments? Jenny.
I'm happy to go. I have several questions. First of all, have we looked, I know we have, Lafayette is the only elementary school we have with a certified tag teacher full-time in addition to talented and gifted coordinator. Am I right about that or wrong?
There are two other elementary schools who have, there are two other elementary schools who have a GT endorsed teacher on their staff, but none other with a full-time dedicated tag TOSA position.
Okay, and if I'm correct, also, you don't get any special access to that if you're a tag student, only if you live in, it's a neighborhood Lafayette school, so the fact that you're a tag student wouldn't help you get into that school.
Correct.
Okay, and have we looked at whether, how effective that is for our tag, have we compared our results with tag students at Lafayette compared to other schools, or?
We have.
And what does that look like?
Lafayette is making much more growth.
So our tag students at Lafayette do better than they do at other schools?
They do, and I'd like to prepare specific data for that. I don't have that broken down specifically. Jonathan, I don't know if you have that or know that offhand, but I can do that.
So it does make a difference, though. Okay. And then I've got a question about ALPs, because one of the budget forums I was at, I had two parents come up to me and comment that the ALP goals that had been set for their children were around things the parents could do for the children at home after school. And so I'm wondering how we're monitoring what goes into the ALPs as far as goals, and whether we're requiring that they be related to academic achievement in school and that kind of thing.
So talented and gifted advisors are trained on the goal writing, and again, I'm able to monitor school by school and not at a district level at this point, and I agree that that's probably an area that needs improvement.
Oh, and I had another question about the grade point average. Was that the grade point average you showed for talented and gifted students, was that just high school, or was it middle and high school, or was it, because we don't give elementary school students letter grades,
school.
do we? Just high school? Thank you.
Elaine?
A couple questions, one following up on Jenny's questions about staffing. When you come back on the 27th, as part of your presentation, can you give us profiles and data around the staff that actually deliver the program? Kind of distribution, certification? Is there a highly qualified component to TAG in terms of what we look at for the people we hire to do the program? Also, you mentioned that in 2013, state audit. A few years ago, we had an audit of our special education, and one of the things that was a dramatic finding in the audit was inconsistency around the goal writing and goal setting, which of course then led to some inconsistency in the reporting of results. Is this a similar type of audit that actually comes in and looks at our entire program and implementation and would be looking at things like consistency of goal setting?
It is, but it's less formal than the special education review process. It looks a lot like a school accreditation visit.
The Katie visit?
It's a very short snapshot, a day and a half visit from a team of people throughout the state. So it's not as extensive as that, but they will be looking at goal monitoring. They'll want to hear from groups of parents and students and teachers, and they'll be asking a lot of the questions that you're asking.
Okay, and my final question is, and just tell me if this is too much for the 27th, and if you can't do it on the 27th, it is totally fine to give these answers in an RFI. Have we looked and done comparisons of our program to districts that we often compare ourselves to, in terms of both the amount of budget spent per student on TAG, the delivery, the structure of the program? I think it would be very helpful to, get some sense of where we are competitively in the resources we give for these students.
We have done some of that, and I'll either put it in an RFI or include that information
great.
in the report.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, you're talking about programming rather than comparing growth data or things like that?
Yeah,
or are you talking about both?
Well, if you want to throw in there comparing the growth data between our talented and gifted students and other districts, that would be fine. We can also go on SchoolView pretty easily ourselves and look at that. But I want to kind of have a comparison of maybe some of the last quantitative information, like how the program is structured, what they deliver, because I think there are multiple models, and how talented and gifted I know Jenny could tell us, but there are multiple models in the way these services could be delivered, and I just want to know how we compare so I understand the decisions we've made in the past about our programming.
And there's some best practices out there that it might be good to compare
That's a great
ourselves with
point.
too.
And identification methods would differ from district to district, or has that become more
It's fairly
standardized?
consistent.
Is it
I mean, there are some expectations that the identification criteria has to meet, and so they tend to look pretty
Better,
similar.
okay, good.
I guess I'd just like to add on to that. I think if we do have some comparative data on some of the results, not only just the growth model, but some of the other metrics that you presented, it would be useful. Because I think, as a board, I think we always need to look at what are our inputs, what are our outputs, and of course the effectiveness of the program is oftentimes, I think, what we're very interested in. So if we're achieving the same results as other districts with more or less resources, it's good to know that as well. I mean, that's an important benchmarking viewpoint. So, other questions from board members?
Just one comment. I've been on the board for 6.5 years in human lives. It's a lot more in dog lives. But I would say that I believe in 6.5 years, this is the first time we've gotten a comprehensive presentation, of which this is part one, on talented and gifted. And I just want to thank Jenny Belville for being elected to the school board, because I think you have brought an awareness of this issue to our board, and it's I'm kind of excited to learn about this, because this is an area we've never looked into. So I just want to thank you for pushing us to do this, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Any other follow-up comments or questions? Thank you very much. We're looking forward
Thank
to 2 weeks.
Me too. Thank you.
Okay, we now move to the action items consent grouping. Tonight it consists of personnel items, approval of minutes for the February 22nd, March 9th, and March 16th meetings, acceptance of the superintendent performance evaluation, approval of amendment to the superintendent contract, approval of award of a consultant agreement for independent audit services, proposed revision of policy JICI, weapons in school, revised health policies, Spanish language development standards, and a grant to Horizons Charter School, Best Grant Capital Project from the Colorado Department of Education. I need a motion. Jim, second. Tom? Does anybody want to pull an item? Any questions or comments about items on the agenda? With that, Sandy, would you call the vote, please?
Albright?
Yes.
Belville?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Roberge?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
We move to our first action item. That's the resolution regarding BVSD Bike to School Day proclamation.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. King. April 22nd, coming up next Thursday, is the 40th anniversary of International Earth Day. I know that these are issues facing our planet today that are very important to our students and our community. And there are many activities scheduled throughout our district to commemorate this day. Some of these activities scheduled for the 22nd are acting as a culminating event for some campaigns that have been going on in schools all year. Some are using these as a kickoff for initiatives that they're going to be beginning. But while I have your ears a little bit, I will tell you a couple of quick little points and some exciting things happening both in the schools and at the district level. I did tell Tori, who's our SAC advisor here, that I was going to give a special shout out to New Vista High School tonight. The New Vista High School Earth Task Force is doing an activity next Thursday. They will be flipping the switch on their new photovoltaic system as a part of their year-long campaign to save energy. They've been acting this year as a pilot school on our behalf on a student-run campaign. Gita Carroll's been working with the Earth Task Force there, and they've been very creative on some of their ideas, and we're really doing a lot of effort to support their activities there and to see how we can duplicate that in some of our larger comprehensive high schools. But it's been pretty exciting to see some of the things they've come up with. This new photovoltaic system will be added to several new systems that have been installed or plan to be installed in BVSD this year. We have flipped switches on systems at Arapahoe Ridge High School, BCSIS, and High Peaks recently, which joined 6 others, including those at Mesa, Manhattan, Jamestown. I'm probably going to miss a couple. But in addition to that, we are adding one more will come on board with the Casey remodel, and then we have 3 more awards that will be coming up this summer, so there'll be an additional 4. We should exceed our 100 kilowatt threshold in the next several months, and that's pretty exciting as a threshold piece. In addition to that, we're in the process of implementing a computer power management system which will control energy use for our desktop computer inventory of nearly 8,000 computers. We've been beta testing a couple of options out there, and we've selected a vendor. This has an annual energy savings of potentially over $300,000. It's a pretty exciting option. What's made that available to us right now is some of the software has become much more mature in recent years, and particularly with us implementing the fiber and the maturity of the software has allowed this to kind of come fruition, but it's real exciting there with the potential savings. We're also in the development of an energy use management system which will monitor specific energy use by each school building and provide leverage points for our capital energy improvements. This is a pretty detailed by school energy use system that has some algorithms that will read some of the fluctuations and allow us to monitor some of the energy use in the building, so we'll be able to identify some real leverage points for energy savings. The list goes on and on and on, but I do want to put a plug in for the Ed Center. The Ed Center next Thursday on Earth Day will be kicking off a zero waste campaign. We figured before we can really get the expectations out there with schools that we have to start modeling that behavior down here. And so we've been doing a lot of things at the Ed Center, and a lot of little things add up, including the use of glasses and water pitchers. I know Sandy Eicher has been a big proponent of paperless systems and things like that. So I really want to encourage people to continue with the little things because they add up, particularly in a time of competing for those resources that are out there. Many of these things have direct economic benefit to the school district and allows us to use those resources in other places to support kids. But really tonight is, I do want to jump to the order of business tonight, which is really to proclaim our support for another outstanding and nationally recognized program. Sue, our speaker in the public section, really said it very well when she talked about Landon understates himself. He's a real treasure for this school district, and this is a very nationally recognized program. Landon and Ken Kruger from Bear Creek were flown to Washington last year to receive a award, and we get a lot of kudos for this one nationally. In that program being the Safe Routes to School program. This program uses awareness, encouragement, events, and other activities to support safe travel to our schools for our students and staff. You heard earlier about the successful collaboration with the City of Boulder, which has brought well over $1 million worth of federal grants towards this program in the last 5 years. Pretty significant capital improvements and to some of our schools, and that's very exciting. The BVSD Bike to School Day is scheduled to correspond with the International Earth Day. Last year, more than 2,275 BVSD students and staff registered for the event, and that's a reminder for those that have yet to register for next week's event. Looking around the table here. The Board of Education is asked this evening to acknowledge these efforts in the form of a proclamation of support for our Bike to School Day in Boulder Valley School District. Thank you.
Okay, so I need a motion to adopt resolution number 10-06, the BVSD Bike to School Day proclamation. Leslie, second. Helene? Any discussion? So, Bike to Board Day, yeah, well, 22nd.
The leeway to feelings.
Okay, having no discussion, Sandy, would you please call the vote?
Albright?
Yes.
Belleville?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Roberge?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Our next action item is the Bear Creek Elementary School Neighbors Appeal to the Board of Education. The board is asked to decide whether to accept or reject the appeal. Do I have a motion, please? Leslie?
Yes, I move that the board accept the appeal from Sheila Kerrigan, Marlon Boos, Marty and Bob Hopper, and Jim and Janine Coughlin, dated March 29th, 2010, for review under Board Regulation KL-R, and schedule a meeting to consider the appeal.
Do I have a second? Tom? Discussion. Elaine?
I would just like to comment that any vote in favor of this motion should not be construed as support for those bringing forward the appeal, but rather it's a recognition by the Board of Education of the opportunity to provide a hearing so that record can be made with information from both parties on both sides of the issue.
Other discussion?
Well, I would just like to follow up on that. We've received a lot of materials from these parties, and we haven't gotten a lot of information from the district. So I'm looking forward to having a more balanced presentation of materials.
Other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I guess we'll call the vote.
Albright?
Yes.
Belleville?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Myers?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Roberge?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, I think I need to talk a little bit about what the next step is going to be. I'm going to make a proposal for how we proceed, and I would like to get the board's concurrence on this. With your approval, I will then proceed to make all the arrangements. We will hold a meeting to consider the appeal sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'll ask our board secretary to help schedule that meeting. But that meeting will last for 1 hour and will be here at the Education Center. I would like to ask all parties in this matter to submit any written documentation that they might have by 5 p.m. on Monday, April 19th. So Mrs. Kerrigan, Mr. Buse, the Hoppers, the Coglins, and Superintendent Chris King should deliver such documentation to Sandy Eicher, Secretary of the Board. And again, this is supplemental exhibits in support of their position in this appeal with respect to the proposed Bear Creek Elementary School project. Ms. Eicher will distribute copies of these documents by email to each of the others and the board members. Prior to or at the meeting, the board will have an opportunity to review the statements in support of or opposition to the appeal, all prior decisions, and all documents that have been submitted. At the meeting, the board will hear up to 15 minutes of argument from one representative on behalf of Ms. Kerrigan, Mr. Buse, the Hoppers, and the Coglins, up to 15 minutes from the superintendent or his designee. During the remaining 30 minutes, the board may ask questions or begin its deliberations. Unless additional time is necessary, the board will reach a decision within 10 working days as provided in Policy KL. That may occur at its regular meeting of May 11th, 2010. So if I have general concurrence on that, I will begin the process of scheduling all of these events. Okay, I will go ahead and do that. Our next agenda item is a study item, which is recommendation to allocate surplus bond funds.
Good evening. As the board recalls, sometime last year, you directed staff to work with CBOC to come up with a process for allocating surplus funds. We did that, presented it to CBOC. They considered it at 3 meetings and voted to support that to you on a 12-1 vote. You considered it at 2 meetings, and last October unanimously approved that process. I'll quickly go through this. I know it's late tonight. That proposed process, the emphasis on the Educational Facility Master Plan was to help schools meet programmatic needs. And the process was prioritized for allocating surplus funds. And the package that staff's presenting you tonight meets the first priority bullet of that process. That is, changes in scope and budget that are necessitated by changes in scope and or school programmatic needs. And I'll talk quickly about surplus funds, and it's really a result of the combination of interest earnings and project savings, which has created an opportunity for the district to provide additional benefit to schools through the allocation of surplus funds to projects. Schools have been informed of the availability of surplus funds. However, to reduce competition, there has been no application process. To identify potential projects, bond staff has reviewed project scopes, examined current and future programmatic needs at schools, consulted with the superintendent's cabinet, conferred with principals, as well as district's operations and maintenance staff. Through this process, staff has identified 4 schools which fit the criteria for priority 1 of the surplus funds allocation process. Available funding. Current cash basis projections show $4.75 million in unallocated funds. Deducting $2.5 million, which would be intended to replenish program reserve for Phase 3, and $1.5 million for the 2011 CBOC reserve leaves $1.75 million. Adding to that $750,000 returned from Phase 1 project savings brings the total available funding to $2.5 million. So that's our base amount that we're going to talk about tonight, $2.5 million. To allow eligible schools to take advantage of surplus funds and execute their projects in a timely manner, now is the time to allocate those funds. In your report, each request is presented in 2 parts, a funding request and the corresponding amendments to the Educational Facility Master Plan. The Priority 1 requests identified by staff tonight include Community Montessori at $850,000, Horizons K-8 Charter at $900,000, Creekside Elementary at $370,000, and Arapahoe Ridge at $100,000. These projects total $2.2 million, which leaves $300,000 remaining. when added to the CBOC $1.5 million reserve, this amount is increased to $800,000. So even if the board were to allocate this money, we will still have $800,000, and staff would anticipate additional project savings realized in phase 2 that probably conservatively that will raise that amount to $1 million. The staff report provides a detailed overview of the package of projects being recommended by staff. I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have about those projects. I would like to add CBOC earlier this month voted unanimously to recommend this package to the board for approval.
Board members, questions or comments? Jim.
Just a quick comment. I know we sweated you quite a bit on this topic back in the fall. I appreciate the way you've thoroughly pursued this, the way you've processed it with CBOC, and I especially appreciate CBOC's time and efforts on this. This was not an issue that anyone would have anticipated us having when we ran a bond for the schools. I look at these programs and where they're going, and I agree that these are going to schools that have needs that have changed in the last 5 years, and I'm glad the district is being flexible and not penalizing those schools for improving their programs. So thank you, Don, and thank you to the CBOC for their time.
Thank you. I'll pass that on to them.
Elaine?
I would like to just say how wonderful it is that once again we can do more than we planned for the kids in the Boulder Valley School District. I think part of it has been favorable, in a weird way, a favorable economy. I think another part of it has been your consistent and thorough management of the projects of you and your staff. And I think it is wonderful. We heard from Community Montessori a few months ago about concerns. And I believe that even without them having to send hundreds of emails, their concerns were heard and identified through a process that appears to be quite fair. And I'd like to echo Jim's comments about CBOC and the role they've played for the board in the overall management of this project. But kudos to you and your staff. And I look forward, I'm not looking forward to the economy staying down, but I am looking forward to us hopefully being able to do even more for kids than we planned as we move into the next phase.
Other comments, questions? Thank you, Don. Our final agenda item is, no, it's a, oh, that's a good point. What do you think? Sure. Okay, so the last item is our suggestions from the board as to future agenda items. Elaine.
Well, we're running out of meeting time for this year, so I assume we're looking at agenda items going into
Oh,
the
absolutely.
fall. I just want to clarify, because Jenny did raise this issue earlier about Great Futures Colorado, that not only are they coming to present on the 27th, but at that time, will we have the opportunity to consider a resolution in support of their work? That had been part of my initial request when I asked for the agenda setting committee to schedule it.
If that's what the board would like, sure.
I would.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Jim?
And it was just back to the universal breakfast. I guess maybe we can look at the RFI, but I think an information item might also suit depending on how staff feels. I'd like to feel more informed about it and know we have a few schools that are doing it, and that might be something to get the public more informed as well.
So we'll bring that to agenda setting, and then, but I know that we would be eager to do that because there are some success stories at some other schools that we could discuss what's working there and lessons learned and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Jenny?
Well, I've had a few emails about our Department of Institutional Equity. Tell me that I'm calling it the right thing. It's kind of late. And so I think it'd be good to have a conversation about what's going to happen to those programs and our equity policy when that department is no longer a specific department next year.
And again, we can Well, there are a number of initiatives out of that office that will continue. And so we can discuss either through RFI or an information item how we're brokering those, who's picking up that work. But virtually most or all of the initiatives will continue. Agenda setting can decide how best to do that.
I'm just going to suggest that because of the public concern we've had, it might be best to address that publicly.
We'll certainly discuss that. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Jim, second. Come on, Tom. All right. Any objections? Hearing none, we are adjourned.